Welcome to OK Let's Talk. I'm your host, Rob, and today we are diving into the latest global reports from all around the world, and we aren't just watching the news. We're breaking down the history and the why behind these headlines to give you a greater, deeper educational perspective. With that being said, let's get to the analysis. All educational commentary and analysis falls under Fair Use, Section 107. Enjoy, everyone.
US fighter jet in its territory, while a second American jet went down in the Gulf. Donald Trump says the US stands to make money by taking Iran's oil, and that with more time, he can open the Strait of Hormuz. After bombing a major bridge in Iran, Trump says the US will launch more attacks on bridges and power plants. And as the US attacks Iran, Donald Trump requests to double the military budget to $1.5 trillion for 2027.
That's insane. Absolutely insane.
Iran's foreign ministry says an American fighter jet has been shot down over the Gulf. It comes just hours after another US warplane was downed over Iranian airspace, prompting a major search operation. Reports from the US say that one of the two crew members was rescued. Iranian state television broadcast footage of what it says is wreckage of the downed aircraft. US and Iranian media say that a helicopter that was part of the search and rescue operation was hit by a projectile. The search efforts
Trump wants to escalate things, right? This is what happens.
Of Koguluya and Boya Hamad, after the crew ejected from the aircraft. State television says a reward is being offered for anyone who can hand over US military personnel. We've reached out to the US Central Command for confirmation and for comment, but as yet have not received a reply. We have correspondents covering developments.
Well, of course you're not going to receive a reply. They're not going to tell you anything.
Washington, D.C., where our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, is standing by. So, Kimberly, what can you tell us?
I mean, Trump wants to escalate this by blowing up bridges, civilian bridges. This is going to happen.
Some fast-moving developments here in the United States. Of course, we have been reporting for several hours now about the search for that remaining crew member aboard an F-15E. One has been rescued, but there is still an ongoing search for that second crew member. And what we know is that in that search and rescue operation were two Black Hawk helicopters as well as a C-130 flying very low around central southwest Iran as part of that operation. Now, NBC News here in the United States reporting that as a result of that very low altitude and vulnerability, that there have been two helicopters that have been struck and that were involved in the search. And what we know, according to the media reports, is that the service members aboard those helicopters are safe. Now, the U.S. president, for his part, we know, has been briefed on this incident. NBC News did reach
Did they use coloring books to brief him? Crayons?
And he refused to discuss the details, reportedly, about this ongoing search operation for the missing military member. What I can tell you, though, is that the U.S. president did express frustration over the coverage of what is obviously not a good day for the U.S. military.
Of course.
And when asked if this would affect negotiations with Iran,
he's upset
the
with the coverage.
said it would not.
Kimberly, don't go away. I'll be back with you in a moment.
Ridiculous.
Iran's armed forces say that a new advanced air defense
Trump has no idea what he's doing. And completely over his head.
Ibrahim Zolfagari said
that
it
shows the coverage.
Iranian forces still have fighting capability against the U.S. military.
In response to the false claims made by the US president regarding the complete destruction of Iran's air defense system, an enemy American fighter jet was targeted and destroyed in the skies over central Iran by a new advanced defense system to the aerospace force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard as part of the country's integrated air defense network. The aircraft was completely destroyed.
Let's bring in Al Jazeera's Ali Hashim, who's live for us in the Iranian capital, Tehran. Ali, talk us through what more the Iranians are saying about all of this.
Well, Adrian, the Iranian television, I can see it now in front of me, saying that Iran today has downed 5 American aircrafts. Or at least they've targeted and intercepted 5 American aircrafts. The 2 F-15 and the A-10, the ones inside the country and the other one towards the Gulf. And the reports of two helicopters, Black Hawk, that were targeted by Iranian fire. And of course, the fifth, they mean with that the drone, an American drone that was downed also in mainland Iran. So they're dealing with.
We're not being told the whole truth here in the United States through our media about what's really going on over there.
Skies aren't anymore.
You can see
open.
Trump
And
crying too about it all.
At least 12,
Even when they
13 days
report
since
the truth.
19th of March, when they
He gets
first
all
announced
upset.
that they've targeted an F-35, and later on with other incidents, reaching to an incident a couple of days ago in Chabahar in Sistan Baluchistan province, where a plane was filmed while being targeted. And then, just like
Hello,
today,
everyone. Welcome
like
to the
Ibrahim
stream.
Zulfikari was saying, the Iranian armed forces said that Iran is using a new system, a new air defense system that was developed after the 12-day war, and now it's integrated. Now, we don't know whether this is an armed carried missile or it's a system integrated in different areas of Iran, but what we are seeing is that there is something going on. The skies aren't open anymore like the narrative that was overwhelming all narratives, and now we have evidence that the Iranians are capable of at least creating some concern for the American military when they are flying over Iranian territories.
Ali, I'll be
That's
back with
war,
you in a
buddy.
moment. Kimberly, what does this
Trump wants
say
to keep
about
going.
President
These things are
Trump's
gonna
claim
happen.
The U.S. has absolute
It's a
military
shame, but
superiority over Iran. Does this change
all we
America's
got to do is leave.
calculation about Iran's air detection systems?
Yeah, it appears that the U.S. president didn't have the complete pieces of information or was flat out lying to the American public and the world about
No,
the military
Trump wouldn't lie to the American people.
that have occurred in Iran, because the U.S. president said as early as March 3rd that the Air Force had been wiped out, that Iran had no air detection, that their radar has been knocked out. But clearly, given the fact that there have been strikes on an F-15E, 2 Black Hawk helicopters, and reportedly there may be further incidents as well, which we should point out have not been confirmed by U.S. Central Command. What this suggests is that there are capabilities that still exist for Iran, and that they are fully functioning, enough to do severe damage to multi-million-dollar aircraft. Now, what we know is that the U.S. president is remaining in Washington for this Easter weekend holiday. This is highly unprecedented, given the fact
Wow.
that this is a major holiday in the United States. The U.S. president has decided
Iran
to
might be
remain
on-
at the White House.
might want to be on guard.
What this suggests is this is a crisis posture.
Might be troops on the ground.
And that there's a need for real-time decision-making, given the fact that there is a rapid escalation in the conflict with Iran. But again, in the midst of all of this, the U.S. president has said very little about this incident. The only thing he has done is post on Truth Social, keep the oil, anyone. And this is highly unusual, given the fact that he is once again
It's all about the
suggesting
oil, right, folks?
that there be an unlawful
No more talk
appropriation
of bring the
resources
Iranian
for,
people and giving them a
the United
democracy
States
to live
against
in.
Iran, which would
No
be a
more
war
talking
crime,
about opening the Strait of
something that
Hormuz.
seems
No
an
more talk
unusual
about
timing to be posting about
getting rid of
when
their
there are
nuclear
still a missing
capabilities.
US service member and
Trump is just
potentially
completely
others injured.
flipped the
White House
switch,
correspondent
and it's
Kimberly
just
Halkett
all about
reporting live
oil.
From Washington.
Of
Many
course.
thanks, Kimberly. Ali Hashim in Tehran, then, as
Oil
Kimberly
that he
mentioned,
says we don't
President
need.
Trump told U.S. media the downing of the jet won't affect negotiations with the Iranians, but Iran is not open to talks right now. Is that right?
I don't blame him.
Well, this is what the Iranian officials are saying. President Trump is saying it won't affect the negotiations, but from the Iranian officials' point of view, there is no negotiations. There are messages being conveyed, and that doesn't elevate to negotiations. So the issue is that we're dealing, and we continue to deal with, two contradicting accounts. One from the United States, from President Trump, presenting a picture of negotiations, Iranian surrender or submission, and from the other side, Iranians presenting another narrative of challenge, of confrontation, and between both, that's a huge gap. As if
You have two
both
completely fucked up
countries
regimes here,
are in
so you
a
can't
state
believe
of
either
war
one.
and at the same time
I know, split the
are
difference.
speaking two different languages.
Al Jazeera's Ali Hashim reporting live.
I mean, who
from
do you believe here?
Tehran. Many thanks, Ali.
I mean, Trump's a known liar his
One
entire
person
life.
died after Iranian missiles were intercepted in the United Arab Emirates. 4 other people were injured by debris falling to the ground after the interception. The attack targeted Abu Dhabi's Habshan gas facility, where operations have been suspended. Let's go live to the Saudi capital, Riyadh. Al Jazeera's Rasul Soda is there watching events across the Gulf. Rasul, Iranian strikes on the Gulf then have claimed lives on Friday.
Indeed, particularly in the United Arab Emirates. So the Abu Dhabi media office said that there has been an incident, the attacks, Iranian attacks on the Habshan gas facility in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. And that attacks have been successfully intercepted, but the debris fell. And while it caused significant damage to the facility, so there has been evacuation. And during the evacuation, one person, tragically, an Egyptian national, tragically lost his life, while 4 other individuals sustained minor injuries. Indeed, this fall of debris is causing a tremendous trouble for the Emiratis here, because they are saying that they are successfully intercepting the missiles and the drones, but there is very little to be done about the debris. Earlier today, 12 more people, according to the Emirati officials, were injured as the result of the falling debris in the area of Ajban in the capital, Abu Dhabi. So what we are seeing is that the United Arab Emirates has been the country that was hit most by the Iranian attacks. And according to Emirati officials, so in the past 24 hours, at least 18 ballistic missiles, 4 cruise missiles, and more than 47 drones were fired from Iran to the United Arab Emirates. And they say that since February 28, since the beginning of the war on, so 2,085 drones, 23 cruise missiles, 475 ballistic missiles were fired at the Emirates. So these are quite huge numbers considering the size of the United Arab Emirates. And just in the Emirates, as a result of these attacks, according to officials, 13 people were killed and 219 people injured just in the United Arab Emirates. And these numbers go much higher when you take the other 5 members of the GCC countries into account.
Rasul,
I wonder if
Italy's
the
Prime
UAE
Minister
is going to
in
join
Riyadh
the fight.
tonight. What's she
There have
doing
been
there?
rumors. Wonder if it's actually going to happen.
Well, so Italy, Meloni is the first head of a government in a Western country that is visiting the region since the beginning of the war. Her flight was kept secret because of the security reasons, but she landed in the city of Jeddah and met the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. So according to the official statement, so she's there to boost the energy security of Italy, discuss the bilateral relations between the 2 countries, and of course, the regional issues as well. So, and she's here not as only the Prime Minister of Italy, but she is Prime Minister of one of the major European countries and representing the European Union here. And in the past week, we have seen there has been the Greek defense minister being here, the British defense minister as well. So more and more of the Western officials are visiting Saudi Arabia, and Meloni is expected to also go to
Meloni's
Qatar
kinda
and
hot.
United Arab
I gotta
Emirates
say
as
it.
well. So here,
Sorry.
what we are seeing is not only Italy, but
I think
whole
she's
European
hot.
countries. They have
You know, she's a right-wing
relied on
loon,
the
too,
GCC when it
but-
comes to the energy supplies. Indeed, in 2023, so the volume of the trade between GCC and European countries was more than $170 billion, and 75% of that was oil and gas. So particularly after Russian war on Ukraine, that ties are much more important. So the goal of these visits that are happening one after another, first is to secure the energy flow by reopening the Strait of Hormuz, but also signing the defense deals agreements with the GCC countries. The latest one is that the UK has decided to deploy the Rapid Sentry air defense system to Kuwait, and perhaps in the coming days, that defense system could be deployed to the other GCC
I don't know, Captain.
countries.
Which
too.
one?
Rasul Sadar reporting live from Riyadh. Many thanks indeed, Rasul. Iran's effective blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has posed a problem for President Trump, as a significant portion of global shipping has been paralyzed due to the war. But in a social media post on Friday, the US president claims that America can open the strait and make money by taking Iran's oil. In a Truth Social post, he said, with a little more time, we can easily open the Hormuz Strait.
Easily,
take
even though
the
he's begging
oil
for help to
and
open
make a
it.
fortune. He goes on to say it would be a, quote, gusher for the world.
A gusher for
Phyllis
the
Bettis
world.
is a
Who's going to
fellow
make
with
the money off
Institute
of
for
that?
Policy
Him and his
Studies
oil
and a
buddies, not
specialist
us.
on U.S. foreign policy with a focus on the Middle
What
East.
happened to
She
freeing the
joins us once
Iranian
again
people?
from Washington, D.C. Good
What
to see
happened
you,
to stopping
Phyllis.
their nuclear
What
program?
do you
All of a sudden,
make
nobody's talking
of
about that.
comment? Does
Now
that
it's just
kind of
about getting
language
the
from
oil,
the president suggest
which is
a
what
clear
everybody knew
strategic
it was going to be
objective,
about.
something more improvised? What will be the reaction internationally
Trump's
to that?
nuts.
You know, Adrian, this is probably as strategic as this president gets. His strategy is, how do we make money? How do we create new
Who's we?
deals? How
The American
do we
people ain't
create
making money off
new,
of this.
land deals, oil deals? That's what this is all about for him. It's a very narrow, personalized vision, if you will, very transactional. And it seems to be as close to a strategy as he is prepared to go. I think that what this says is that his understanding
Yep, Captain.
of the crucial nature of the Strait of Hormuz in terms of
Some
global
places it
commerce,
is.
not only oil, but consumer goods,
It's
all
four
kinds
something
of
a
things
gallon
go
here. I
through the
think
strait.
diesel, I'm not sure.
And the notion that this will just naturally be reopened as soon as the fighting stops doesn't take into account how the actual decisions get made, particularly the role of giant insurance companies that are not about to let their ships go through until they have guarantees from all the parties that have the capacity to shut down the strait, which everyone has known for many years was a likely response of Iran if there were to be a direct attack on it, as the US and Israel waged.
Everybody knew this was coming, right?
February 28th. So this is, you know, the limitations of their understanding of it. They're not about to allow those ships to go through until they get those guarantees.
Phyllis, something else I
Yep.
wanted to ask you about.
Fuck
More than
Donald Trump,
100
man.
legal experts say the US
He's completely in over his head. He's done nothing but fail upwards his entire life.
President Trump dismissed them as so-called experts. He said, what does that say about how international law is being treated? Does that kind of rhetoric risk damaging US credibility on the rules of war?
Oh, he's already destroyed that.
I think that
Or
the
credibility
damage to
on
US
everything.
credibility in terms of international law, international humanitarian law, all of it has been significantly destroyed through this war. What President Trump has also said is that, quote, I don't need international law. He said directly that the only thing constricting his power in the world
He's
is
such a
his
pig.
own moral compass.
He doesn't have a moral
His
compass.
words, I don't need international law. That's a horrifying thing to say. What it does is to
Yeah,
say that
from a sitting
the
president.
U.S. is not bound by the international laws that the rest of the world at least acknowledge exist. They may violate them, as many countries do. But if we look, for example, in 2003, when George Bush took the world to war against Iraq, in violation of the UN requirements that there be a Security Council resolution,
Hello, all.
there was no Security Council resolution. He was violating international, launched by the US and Israel in complete violation of international law, really an example of what the Nuremberg judges called the supreme international crime, which is the crime of aggression. This war is fundamentally undermining the existence, the very existence of the foundation of international law as a whole. It's a very, very dangerous move.
Phyllis, the president says that the US and Israel have complete air superiority over Iran, and yet today a US jet, at least one, has been downed over Iran. Another one we're hearing crashed into the Gulf. Not decisive, I give you that, but what does it tell us about what the president is hearing from his military advisors?
Well, we don't know what he's hearing from his military advisors. We know what he's telling the American people and the people of the world, which is, I don't know what's going on in that country. I don't know what our military is doing. I don't know if they are committing war crimes. I don't know if they are controlling the skies, as he likes to say. Clearly, he's not telling the truth, whether it's because other people have given him bad information, whether he simply ignores what they say, whether he's just making stuff up. Any of those are possible. All of them are possible. So I don't think we know why he's saying that. What we do know is it's not true. Whether it's a deliberate lie, whether it's miscommunication, is less significant than the fact that he is prepared to get out there and say stuff that is visibly not true for anybody who has a television, a computer, a smartphone. So it's not like it's convincing anybody that the US is control of the skies over Iran. That hasn't been true all along, and it certainly isn't true now. There's a big question about the pilots, what they were doing. What was their target? Were they committing a war crime? They were apparently shot down somewhere over the southwest in Iran. That's the same broad area as the large bridge, the biggest bridge in Iran, actually, that was destroyed by the US a couple of days ago, which would be potentially a war crime in and of itself. So we don't know what they were doing, what these pilots and bombers were doing in their F-15, what they were aiming at, what they were hitting.
Good to talk to you again, Phyllis. Many thanks indeed for being with us. Phyllis Pennis there in Washington. Israel's followed through on its threats to blow up two key bridges in southern Lebanon. The Sama and Mashgara bridges connect the north and south of the country. These pictures are from earlier on Friday before the attack. The military says that it's trying to prevent Hezbollah from moving reinforcements. Israeli forces have been stepping up their invasion of the south, destroying homes and infrastructure. Let's take you live now to Beirut. Al Jazeera's Heidi Pett is there. Heidi, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, so these are the 8th and 9th bridges over the Litani River that Israel has destroyed in the last couple of weeks, saying, as you were noting just then, the reason that they're targeting these bridges is to prevent Hezbollah moving men and weapons between the north and the south of the country. But of course, these bridges are used by civilians, and it's having the effect of cutting off South Lebanon from the rest of the country. We've seen Lebanese politicians, the president, in fact, warning that this was a precursor to an expanded ground operation, that he feared it was a prelude to an occupation of the south, and we have, of course, seen Israeli military and political leaders confirming that that is indeed their objective. These two bridges, they're two bridges very, very close together between the towns of Sokhmor and Mashgara, which is actually in the southern Bekaa Valley, and so that represents an expansion of this targeting of infrastructure. Previously, it's been concentrated in South Lebanon, but this now is extending up into the southern Bekaa Valley, trying to eliminate those transport routes. And the context is part of this broader campaign of the Israeli ground operation. They've been focusing on towns not that far from there, the town of Hiam, which, if they're able to fully control that, and they're very close to it, in fact, would help them, again, to cut off the Bekaa Valley from southern Lebanon.
He's a dictator.
And these are two areas where Hezbollah has traditionally operated from a position of strength, so they're trying to eliminate the link between those two regions. Now, the broader context here in Lebanon today, of course, is this continued Israeli air operation. We saw multiple airstrikes on the southern suburbs of Beirut today. 4 strikes, although the last of those apparently did not explode. And of course, multiple airstrikes across the south of Lebanon, and a recommitment in line with statements that we heard earlier today from Israel Katz, the Israeli defense minister, recommitting to this plan of destroying, of detonating Lebanese homes in villages close to the border. Detonations have been ongoing in a number of locations, including the town of Me'ora, which is actually a few kilometers from the border up the coast on the Mediterranean Sea. Now, the death toll here in Lebanon continues to rise. It is well over 1,300 now, with more than 4,000 people wounded in 4 weeks of war.
Al Jazeera's Heidi Pett reporting live from Beirut. Many thanks, Heidi. Lebanon's health minister has accused Israel of targeting its medical sector. More than 1 million people have been displaced across the country as Israel intensifies attacks. UN agencies say they don't have enough aid to help the sheer number of people in need. Al Jazeera's Zaina Hodder reports now from Beirut.
The Israeli army is fighting on multiple fronts in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah is trying to slow its advance. This is not the first time Israel has invaded Lebanon, and Hezbollah is showing its ability to launch guerrilla-style attacks. Despite coming under Israeli strikes for months before the latest outbreak of violence, the group says it will prevent Israel from maintaining control. But more than a month into the conflict, neither side has the upper hand. Relentless Israeli airstrikes have been killing civilians, and most villages near the border are being reduced to rubble. Israel is promising to raze them to the ground in the same way it destroyed Gaza. Officials here are worried by Israel's announcement that 600,000 people will not be allowed to return to their homes.
And it all depends on how much of a land grab the Israelis will insist on, and of course, and it's totally unacceptable for us. I mean, this is a huge violation of our sovereignty.
UN agencies warn prolonged mass displacement in Lebanon is very alarming. 1.2 million people are homeless, and they don't have enough humanitarian aid. The nearly bankrupt state relies on donors, which have reduced their support and funding.
There are parts of the South that are being completely flattened.
Nothing but war crimes from Israel and the U.S.
Why we saw prolonged displacement in 2024 was because people's homes were gone and they just couldn't go back. So you multiply that. Even if the war ends tomorrow, that destruction remains and there needs to be a rebuilding.
Lebanese officials say it's not clear when the fighting will end. There's concern, especially among those forced from their homes in southern Lebanon, that Israel is planning a long-term occupation. It's done it before, occupying territory for nearly 2 decades. The Israeli defense minister says the army will maintain control of areas south of the Litani River even after the conflict ends. Israeli forces left southern Lebanon in 2000 after near-daily attacks by Hezbollah. And while Israel frames this military operation as necessary to protect its northern communities, many warn history has shown they don't bring security. Zena Khudr, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
Israel's expansion has long tested the boundaries of international law, pushing beyond borders and deep into occupied land. From
I blame
settlement
Trump
growth
for this.
and annexation
Picking
to
Granny.
endless impunity. Questions
100% this is Trump's fault. This is a war of choice.
As Al Jazeera's Noor Uday explains,
It's getting American kids killed and wounded. We're blowing through hundreds of billions of dollars.
Until recently, Israel argued that its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, of the Syrian Golan
Trump wants
Heights
a
and Lebanese
$1.5
territory
trillion
was
defense
temporary
budget for next year.
for defensive purposes. In the past 10
And he wants to
years,
cut all
things
sorts of
have
social
changed.
programs to help fund it.
Whispers of a so-called
Insane.
Greater Israel became an election platform. Annexation
Absolutely
became
crazy.
policy endorsed by its most important ally, the United States. So what does a Greater Israel look like? Ideologically, one of its most prominent pioneers was Ze'ev Jabotinsky, the role model of the current Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. It builds on a militaristic interpretation of scripture which says that God promised the land from the Euphrates to the Nile rivers to
Scripture,
the Jewish people.
okay.
Israel, the ideologues say, must only forge its place in the region with force. Israel's insatiable appetite for land was given the biggest boost during Donald Trump's first term. The U.S. recognized its illegal annexation of East Jerusalem and the Syrian Golan Heights. In 2022, annexing the occupied West Bank became official government policy. Today, Israel is using its so-called
This was the
Yellow
biggest
Line
mistake
buffer
we ever
zone
made, giving
to
them
take
their
over
own
more
country.
than half of Gaza, with senior ministers declaring this line is Israel's new border. And the Syrian territory Israel occupied in 2024 is now being used as a launching pad to invade Lebanon.
What a
Israel
joke.
says it will occupy southern Lebanon up to the Litani River. Senior ministers and generals say the Litani will become Israel's new border, and settler groups already have blueprints for future.
Just walking
illegal
into another
settlements.
country and just taking their
Zionist
land.
Parties in the Israeli opposition do
What?
not challenge this policy. All of them have dropped ending the occupation from their platforms.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that Israel's army has destroyed 70% of Iran's steel production capability. He also said that Israel has been coordinating with the U.S. to attack Iran's infrastructure.
Along with our American friends, we continue to pound the Iranian regime. We are eliminating their leaders, destroying their bridges and infrastructure. Over the past 2 days, the Air Force destroyed 70% of steel production in Iran. This is a massive achievement. This is a big source of income for the Iranian regime. We have total coordination with President Trump and the U.S. Army.
Iran has launched a series of strikes on northern and central Israel. At least 2 cars were destroyed when debris from an intercepted missile fell over the city of Kiryat Arba. No casualties were reported. Israeli authorities say that 19 people have been killed by missiles launched from Iran and Lebanon since the conflict began. This is Al Jazeera live from Doha. Let's remind you of the main developments this hour. Iran's foreign ministry says an American fighter jet has been shot down over the Gulf. It comes just hours after another U.S. warplane was downed over Iranian airspace. Reports from the U.S. say one of 2 crew members has been rescued. A French vessel has crossed the Strait of Hormuz for the first time since the Iran war began. Ships linked to Russia and some countries in Asia have also been given safe passage. Tehran has reportedly started to charge ships money to pass. Israel has blown up 2 key bridges in southern Lebanon. They're the 8th and 9th crossings over the Litani River to be destroyed by Israeli forces. These pictures are from earlier on Friday before the attack. Israel says it's trying to prevent Hezbollah moving reinforcements.
Okay.
A major bridge connecting Tehran to the city of Karaj has been destroyed by the US and Israel. Iran says the attack points to the, quote, moral collapse of its enemies. The attack on the B1 bridge, which was expected to open later this year, killed 8 people. President Trump took to Truth Social to boast about the strike, saying bridges next, then electric power plants. People living in the area say that it was not a military site.
Mr. Trump took the trouble to send bombs and missiles to their home on the night of the 19th of Ramadan, a holy night. They were not military. This is not a military area. It is residential, and it was my sister's home. All 3 were killed.
Al Jazeera's Amar Lafi has been to the bridge in Karaj, and here's what he saw.
Just behind me is the bridge President Trump said they had destroyed. The suspension bridge called the B1 bridge was targeted twice. It came under 2 successive attacks. As a result, 8 Iranians were killed and about 100 others injured. As you can see, there is a village below the bridge, which means this is a residential area, and the majority of victims were residents of that village. Also, according to Iranian authorities, the bridge came under a double tap, meaning that when the rescue and medical teams rushed to the scene, they fell victim to the second strike. You can also see massive cranes around the bridge, which suggests it was not fully constructed, and it was supposed to officially open next June. As per Iranian officials, the bridge is characterized by its sophisticated engineering design and intricate structure.
The project was to be soon inaugurated and serve our people. It is the sum of pure Iranian expertise, and this seems to be the reason that infuriated the enemies. The bridge does not serve any military purpose at all. This fact is supported by aerial views and maps.
During the
Unlike
Battle of
Trump's
Britain,
statement,
Hitler moved off of hitting Britain's military targets and started bombing cities and civilian targets instead. And it didn't work out too great for Hitler.
Describing it as an act of defeat
I mean, I guess Trump has completely given up on trying to get the Iranian people to rise up against the regime and support us. Why would they support us? Look at this. Why would they support
us? What
us?
cannot be repaired is the damage suffered by the US's name and reputation in the global arena. Iran strongly condemns the deliberate attacks on civilian infrastructure. According to the latest statistics released by the Red Crescent, more than 120,000 residential and commercial units have been targeted and destroyed since the beginning of the war, 40,000 of which are in the capital city, Tehran.
Dozens of legal experts in the US say that some military strikes on Iran could amount to war crimes. Their concerns revolve around 4 areas, including what they describe as the dismantling of civilian protections. Al Jazeera's Jalid Aga takes a look now at some of the critical infrastructure that's been hit.
Iranians are living under daily bombardment, and an increasing number of US and Israeli attacks are targeting civilian infrastructure. That includes a medical research facility in Tehran, founded more than a century ago. The Pasteur Institute is Iran's main production hub for vaccines against highly infectious diseases such as cholera and polio. Strikes have also destroyed a major bridge between Tehran and Karaj. The attack came after US President Donald Trump threatened to bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages. US and Israeli strikes
That's
on
wonderful
Isfahan
rhetoric coming from a
and
sitting president
Ahvaz
of the United
have
States
forced
of America.
two of Iran's largest steel mills to shut down. Iran is the world's 10th largest producer of crude steel, and any halt in production could have major implications for its economy. The Iranian Red Crescent says since the war began, more than 117,000 civilian units have been damaged. That includes more than 93,000 homes, 316 health and medical facilities, and 763 schools. Most notably, a strike hit a girls' school in the southern city of Minab on day one. At least 168 people were killed, many of them children. The UN human rights chief is still urging Washington to complete its investigation into the suspected US attack and publish its findings.
Convicted felon,
Deliberately
sexual
targeting
abuser,
civilian infrastructure is illegal under international humanitarian law, according to the Geneva Convention. And more than 100 international law specialists are warning US and Israeli strikes on Iran may amount to war crimes.
Dr. Ali Jafarian is the Deputy Health Minister in Iran. He told Al Jazeera about the impact of US-Israeli airstrikes on research centers and pharmaceutical facilities.
The pastor is the site of making researchers. More than 20 research centers are there, more than 20 labs are there, which is the difference that, and they're working on vaccines and so on. So there is no, doubt about the dual usage of anything in the Pasteur Institute. And now most of the facilities are, distracted, cannot be used anymore. Our personnel and staffs from the Pasteur Institute are not going there. We have to relocate all the facilities to other centers. In some part that's been done. But it was attacked for, I think, about 3 times. And each time the destruction was more and more. And we had attacks to the universities in the past days and to the Jaidesh University also. We have attacks to pharmaceutical facilities, 24 pharmaceutical facilities, 8 medicine distributing companies, 14 medical pharmaceutical industries, and 2 medical equipment industries are attacked. 3 of those facilities cannot continue the work.
I just want to take a moment to show you the latest pictures we're getting from Iran across the country, in fact, where people have come out onto the streets to celebrate what Iran's foreign ministry says was the downing of American.
Is some of this Iranian government propaganda right here?
Which was shot down over
maybe.
Iranian
is it also Iranian people being fed up with Donald Trump and his war on them and killing their citizens, innocent civilians and kids?
There's still no word on the fate of the other crew member. So
this is not going well.
Jet came down
this
over
is not going
the
well.
Gulf. As you can see, latest pictures from across Iran in various cities in the country. People out on the streets celebrating the downing of those 2 U.S. aircraft. President Trump is requesting
exits
at least
should be brought up on charges for sure.
For defense spending in 2027. That's the largest.
The orange lunatic won't face any repercussions, but the people around him will. And exits, absolutely. Trump's already blaming him for this war, so.
To make that happen, Trump has requested a 10% reduction in non-defense programs. That follows an announcement 2 weeks ago that the U.S. national debt had reached $39 trillion.
So let's keep spending trillions of dollars a year on wars.
National security publication Inkstick. She says that
this is why I'm getting my fucking Social Security next year, as soon as I'm eligible, before we go completely belly up. Fuck this.
This is a lot more money than we need for the Iran war, first of all. Second of all, this is not how we've budgeted for wars in the past. In the past, this is why we have an almost $1 trillion annual military budget to begin with. And that's where our money for wars is supposed to come from. And prior to the Bush years, we actually did budget wars out of that base budget. We started, however, now doing what the Trump administration wants to do, which is passing emergency funding, which is above and beyond. So they want not only that emergency funding, but then this additional $1.5
Democrats better
trillion
take the House
per year, which would be a permanent increase
in November and
to
put the
military
brakes on this
budget, which is
spending,
going
man. This is
far above and beyond
insane.
anything that we need for
They don't
any
have to
current
impeach
war.
Trump or anything like
campaigned
that.
as
Just
the peace
put the brakes
president.
on
He
him.
said no new wars.
Stop the
However,
insanity.
this is an
good enough
administration
till
that has
28.
been very focused on war, even changing the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War, and this is a war budget. This supports that. This cuts domestic priorities like education.
He's definitely running the
cuts,
country into the ground.
Money for the CDC,
But like I just said,
the EPA.
Democrats
and
need
it
control of at least the
includes
House.
a massive increase to the
To stop
military
the bleed
budget,
here
which
and
really
put him
just
in his place.
shows where the priorities are lying.
Getting the
for this
Senate too would be
administration.
great.
Historically, the State Department money for diplomacy.
Once again, you don't
things
have to
that prevent
impeach
us
him.
from going to war
You know,
has really been underfunded.
you can if you
And
want,
this
but you don't
budget
have
would
to.
continue
You just
to
got to
cut
put the
that.
brakes
So,
on.
first of all, just
Put him in
I
a
think what
corner.
we can expect from a budget like this is that when you spend a lot of money on war, you get more war, and when you spend a lot less money on things that prevent war, you get more war. So that's what we can expect. First of all. Second of all, there's a lot of cuts to health, education, all of the things
He
that
absolutely
impact
needs to be
Americans
stopped, Brian.
day to day. This is in the midst of massive inflation, very high gas prices, given the given everything going on in the Middle East, and it's going to have a massive impact on Americans just in that sense. Were it to be passed, now we have to remember this is absolutely just a first off proposal from the Trump administration. Congress is still going to make the decision that they want to make, and last year they rejected a lot of these same
Congress,
cuts. So we
bunch
may
of
expect them
lapdogs.
to
Give me a
reject these
break.
cuts again.
Let's take a look at the impact of
They're
the
gonna give
Iran
Trump
war on
whatever he
small
wants.
businesses in particular. In London, here's Al Jazeera's Jonah Hull.
Well, hello there and welcome to Al Jazeera's studio here in London, where we're measuring the impact of the Iran war on small businesses. Now, the major UK and European markets may be closed for the Easter break, but the war's impact on oil supplies and energy prices remains top of investors' minds. Brent crude rose just above $110 a barrel on Thursday before later settling at around the $109 mark. That's still worrying news for businesses relying on petrol and diesel to power their operations. Small and medium enterprises are the primary drivers of many economies, including the UK's, and business confidence here has fallen
the US.
to a record low, as Al Jazeera's Rory Challens found out when he spoke to business owners in East London.
Of all the G7 economies, the UK is taking the heaviest blows from the Iran war. The OECD has given it the biggest growth downgrade, largely because of its heavy reliance on imported energy. And while the government shields households with a price cap, businesses have to take the hit, and that leaves small entrepreneurs exposed. Now, this hardware store in Hackney has been here 90 years.
Well, I mean,
Its owner
if you
has
mean
run it
government for the people being everyone named Trump, hey, then the government's working just fine, right?
Everything will go
Big
like
defense
20,
contractors
25% up.
working
Diesel
out
this
great.
morning is £2 a litre. From
Oil
next week,
barons,
stopping
oil
deliveries,
companies,
our gas deliveries,
hey,
no more van going out.
they're loving
Are you
this.
expecting your
Loving
profits to come down as well?
I think so, yes, of course.
Everyone
We have
else?
to because we're not doing
Taking
the
it
use,
in
we
the
have to
ass.
cut the service completely down because of the diesel.
Sadaqat's story is far from unique. 75% of UK firms have told Barclays Bank they've already been hit by the war. Transportation, energy and supply chain costs are the three main pressure points, and there's no government support yet in sight. Now, if it's a brief war, the pain is likely to be short-lived, but it'll probably get worse before it gets better. Rory Challens, Al Jazeera in London.
Well, with me now here in the studio is Felipe Camargo. He's the lead global economist at advisory group Oxford Economics. Good of you to be with us. And as you heard there from Rory's report, the UK, the hardest hit among G7 economies from what the International Energy Agency is describing as the worst oil supply disruption in history. It's not as though the other big economies in the G7 are weathering this very much better than the UK, are they?
They're not, certainly not. Thank you for having me, Jonah, by the way. We're actually looking into shaving GDP growth forecasts by 0.4 percentage points to 2.6 this year. So it's going to be a widespread economic impact.
Globally or here?
Globally,
Globally.
Yes. And in the UK, certainly a little more with a 1 percentage point cut to 0.4. So it's going to be a stagnant year for the.
So all of those economies struggling, even the United States?
Exactly, yes. The US feels it through gasoline costs because they drive considerably more. So it's more of an impact on the consumer directly rather than businesses.
Okay, Felipe, stay with us there, because as we've been saying, it's small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs they're known as, that are the lifeblood of the global economy, responsible for more than 2/3 of jobs worldwide. Well, in the UK, more than 99% of businesses are SMEs, and they employ 16.9 million people. That's 60% of the country's workforce. Well, around 75% of SME owners say the Iran war is significantly impacting their business. They're now expected to raise prices by 3.7% this year, up from 3.4% in February, because of a surge in operational costs. So, Felipe, inevitable consequence of this war is that prices will go up. These costs have got to be absorbed somewhere. They will inevitably be paid for by the consumer. And it is the worst off among those consumers who, as ever, will fare the worst.
Precisely, yes. So I think one of the main points here to be concerned with is gas prices going up, shooting up the most. We have seen first settlement contracts going up by up to 80% year to date. And naturally, diesel prices as well have risen by 30%. Since the start of the war at the pump. These inevitably have to be passed on to consumers through grocery stores, restaurants. These services will certainly be forced to passing on these costs to consumers.
Okay, well, lest we lose sight of just how significant, how important this sector is, this small and medium-sized business enterprise sector is. Take a look at this number, because it's quite an astonishing figure. Here it comes, $3.7 trillion US dollars, 2.8 trillion British pounds. That is the total turnover, the total income, rather, generated by small and medium enterprises in the UK alone just last year. It's a huge segment of the economy, this, and as Rory was saying there, it is enormously vulnerable to rises in energy costs, to rises in supply chain costs, to rises.
All of this insanity created by one man, one orange man.
Precisely, yes. So we have seen Amazon, for example, announce surcharges
worldwide
of
mess,
3.5% to their
worldwide mess
deliveries, and naturally,
and he's being held accountable to no one.
Going to feed up into transportation
by
costs
no one.
that are going to be bared by the consumer at some point. So, totally agree.
He's ruining the lives
of rising fuel costs.
Hundreds of millions of people around the world, billions.
One of the
and he does not care.
On businesses and consumers alike is the cost of fuel. It's vital for transporting and selling goods. Italy is extending a cut in fuel taxes by a month. That's a measure set to cost the government more than $570 million. Farming businesses will be given an extra 20% in tax credit. The tax waiver had been due to expire next week, but the Italian economy minister said the government could roll out other measures if the Iran war continues, adding that it was now inevitable that the EU would have to discuss relaxing budget rules to cope with the economic.
I think they're more afraid of their voters. You know, the Republican primary voters are all MAGA lunatics.
Motorists who have no choice but to drive.
I can't explain it.
As around 10% of petrol stations across the country have experienced.
It'll be interesting to see what happens to MAGA once Trump is done.
The French Prime Minister will also be meeting.
What happens to the Republican Party? Do they normalize? Do they move back to the center, or do they stay way out there?
All over the world now, looking at ways in which they can shelter the consumer, provide some form of protection. There's a problem, of course, with that. It's expensive. And if you pour money into sheltering consumers now, you're storing up, presumably, potential problems for the future for the taxpayer.
Precisely. You pay with accrued interest in public debt 2-3 years down the line, naturally. There's also an element of timing, right? It's difficult for governments to time this shock just right, just because of how volatile it tends to be. So oil prices tend to skyrocket and then fall down.
We will see.
And governments don't necessarily act in accordance to that. So
what's over pretty soon, Mud Butters?
They still have these accrued.
They are, yeah.
Oil may go up quickly and come down quickly, but there's this other effect deeper down the chain, isn't there?
See what happens in November.
Skyrocketing costs and then floating down like a feather, slowly. So the EU and others are banking now.
You would think Democrats would just sweep everything in November.
Precisely, yes.
I mean,
indeed,
Trump's poll numbers are
our
horrible.
baseline is baked into the assumption of a 50% closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and which would lead to the oil price falling to $80 per barrel by the end of the year, Brent prices, that is. But what if that isn't true? The risks are actually for a protracted closure, even after the conflict is said and done and a ceasefire is decided. We will still not have certainty of safety travels around.
High insurance rates on these ships. It's going to take forever to get this oil flowing again.
Second quarter.
And even that
Damaged oil wells and infrastructure all over the Middle East.
Than it was before the war.
Things that aren't damaged are shut down.
With the advisory group, Global Oxford Economics. Thanks very much for your time. And that is all from us here in London. From me, Jonah Hull. Back to you in Doha.
Let's take a look at what else is making news around the world right now. Burkina Faso's military leader says there's no room for democracy in his country. Ibrahim Traoré seized power in a coup in September 22 and committed to organizing an election 2 years later. But in January, he dissolved all political parties and has reaffirmed his intention to rule for the long term.
Non, nous ne parlons même pas d'élection d'abord. On a des défis.
No, we are not even talking about elections. We have challenges, we have to take them on. That is what we stick to. We are not going to bend even a little. People have to forget the question of democracy, and that is a job. We have to tell them the truth. Democracy is not for us. We have our own model. We are not even going to try and look like anyone else. We have to completely change the way things function, but above all, mindsets, so that people open their eyes to see the world, and so that we no longer fall into those pitfalls. People say that democracy is slavery. There is no democracy in this world. They apply it when they want, and to establish it, they kill. A democracy that kills, we don't want that.
Adama Gaye is an Africa analyst and former director of communications at ECOWAS. He joins us now from Milan. Good to have you with us. So Traoré, as we heard, says people should forget democracy and that it
Trump wants $150 million from Congress to reopen Alcatraz.
The transition he promised to civilian rule.
It is not truly a shift. This is something that was expected because many African leaders at the moment, they are saying that democracy is not delivering the goods in Africa, and also they are taking advantage of a window of opportunity that is shown off suddenly in many parts of the world, including in the USA, with Mr. Trump not respecting democracy, with Russia, with China, with a single party, and many African countries that used to be pressed after the end of the Cold War as a conditionality to receive aid to practice democracy, they no longer feel that this is
Trump doesn't believe in democracy. He wants to be just like his buddies Putin and Xi and Kim in North Korea. He looks up to them, he idolizes them, wants to be just like them.
To say that we don't need democracy, we want to develop our nation on the way going forward. Right. So this is truly something that they understood.
Adama, he's linking elections to security. No vote until the insurgency is under control. Is that a credible argument? Burkina Faso is battling a insurgency. Any evidence that prolonged military rule is somehow delivering better security outcomes on the ground?
No, they are not delivering better results in terms of security. Violence is still lingering on. Terrorists are terrorism is raging.
USA is a bully.
Africa, and just bringing the
That's all Trump knows how to do is be a bully.
And,
sometimes you need a scalpel. He's nothing but a hammer. An old, broken, rusted hammer.
Justification. It is just a pretext they wanted to have, a derivation, so to say, in order to get rid of democracy. But they are not alone in terms of the military not respecting democracy. You have many civilians across Africa who are no longer organizing properly elections. They've come to understand that what their population wants is to get jobs, food, security, and those kind of
I agree, Victoria.
challenges. That's what they want.
Operation Epstein Fury, right?
Rule of law and democracy.
You say they're not alone. Regionally, with Mali and Niger on similar paths. I mean, are we now looking at a Sahel model?
And he wants more money for it. They already have $1 trillion defense budget, Victoria, and now he wants a $1.5 trillion defense budget, and he wants to slash social programs and domestic programs to help fund it. He just got done saying the other day, we can't do daycares and schools and all this other stuff because he's got to fund wars. Ridiculous. Yeah, I'm a registered independent, Victoria. I agree.
Even though the democratic practice is not complete,
We definitely need a viable third party. But in the meantime, as long as the Democrats present themselves as the party of normal, I'm going to keep voting for them for now.
Tenets of democracy, but ultimately the people are suffering from the fact that the economy is not developing. So at the end of the day, people are wondering whether you want democracy or you want development, as we have had that in Asian nations with developmental states like Singapore, Malaysia, China, so to say, as examples that can be emulated in Africa. But ultimately, the jury is still out there. We have to wait because African population.
Yeah, Trump is a pedophile, more than likely.
Process, through the conferences they organize, through the end of the Cold War, through the internet revolution, and also the yearnings of the population.
And because you don't have any proof, Victoria, right?
This thing you cannot overnight. Whether you are
Trump just fired Bondi.
Wipe it out and say,
Why? Because he didn't like the way she was handling the Epstein files.
Good to talk to you.
Blanche has stepped in to become the acting AG, and he's already told Fox News that the Epstein files are done and dusted. They're released in full. There's nothing more out there.
Eastern and northern Afghanistan. At least 8
Bullshit.
people died when a house collapsed in Kabul. The 5.9 magnitude quake was centered on a mountain range east of the city of Kunduz. It was also felt in neighboring Pakistan.
Thanks, John.
Pakistan's government says that it will slash petrol prices by 30 cents a litre in order to address rising costs linked to the Iran war. That announcement comes just a day after the government hiked fuel prices and sparked mass protests.
Yeah, well, it's not real news. It's state-operated media, like you get in Iran.
Have triggered panic buying and massive queues across the country. A Russian drone strike has hit a veterinary hospital in the Kyiv region. Al Jazeera's Audrey McAlpine reports from Kyiv.
This is the result
Hey,
of the
Fox News is fertile ground for Trump to bring in people to work in his administration, because that makes them qualified.
By a Shahed drone. It's one of multiple sites across the country that was hit and which has prompted electricity outages across the country. We spoke with one of the neighbors here who described the attack.
I hear some people like screaming, and of course I have panic, but we know what we need to do when we have the situation, because
Just vote.
It's not one day,
Vote,
not
Victoria.
our country.
That's all we can do.
So we know what we need
Get
to
the
do.
word out to your friends, to your neighbors,
I have three
whoever you hang out with and talk to, convince them
You can see
that
the
Trump needs to be
drone
shut down.
itself that hit into this veterinary hospital. It's a Russian-style Shahed drone. We can see here on the side that it's the Geron 2
You create content,
model.
Victoria?
It's
Start
something
creating
Ukraine has
content.
a
I'm just
lot of
another old white
experience
guy
with shooting down,
spewing
and
his
something
crap,
as Ukrainian
his
President
beliefs.
Vladimir Zelensky said in his address
Fire up
last
your
night.
phone or a camera
This
and start
experience
creating.
is something that he
Get
would
the word
continue
out.
to export to countries that, in his words, were being attacked
If I can do it,
by Iran.
anybody can do it.
And though Ukraine is planning on exporting this know-how, we can see from this attack that it's still something that it faces here in Ukraine.
Well, yeah,
Audrey
right. Gas is up because he's cut off like 20% of the oil supply. It's a global commodity. So, you know, prices are going to rise. Even if we're a net exporter, it doesn't matter.
And the subsequent attacks by Iran.
Attacks on energy facilities on both sides is a dangerous precedent. It will cause repercussions throughout the world.
We can now see a
John, have you subscribed yet? Are you a subscriber to the channel, buddy?
Stay with Al Jazeera for the latest developments.
The average price of a gallon of gas during Biden's last month in office was $3.09. The average price right now is $4.09. So, bye-bye, John. Yeah, get your news online, man. Get it from anywhere other than, the main news. Certainly not Fox, certainly not CBS, soon to be certainly not CNN. Get your news directly from the source. AP, Reuters, NPR, wherever. Online. Do what MAGA does. Do your own research, right? John, I don't care where you get your nudes from, man. I don't want to see your gay porn, buddy. So you're not subscribed, but you're showing up in the chat? You do know that showing up here screws up your algorithm, right? In your feed? Right, so every time you grab your phone, you start scrolling through lives or shorts. Guess whose face you're going to see? The more you interact here, the more it fucks you over somewhere else. Thank you.
The US fighter jet in its territory, while a second American warplane goes down in the Gulf.
You're welcome, Victoria. I'm doing what I can.
Those reported strikes, but the US
Trying to get the word out. We need more people doing it. Lots more people doing it.
Donald Trump says the US stands to make money by taking Iran's oil, and that's with more time.
John, you haven't talked truth in weeks, buddy. Weeks.
And with thousands more US troops headed to the Middle East, are they being used as a bargaining chip to end the war, or do they signal a whole new phase of the conflict? We'll discuss that question later this hour on This Is America.
That's all he does, Victoria, is kiss Trump's ass. That's all he does. They're in a cult. They just can't, their ego will not allow them to admit that they're wrong.
Says it's downed two
That's all it is.
American fighter jets, or two American planes, I should say, on Friday, and its forces still having fighting capability against the US and Israel. The first warplane was shot down, according to Iranian reports, in Iran's Kogiluya and Boyar Ahmad province, prompting a major search operation for the crew. US media say one of them has been found. Two military helicopters involved in that search were reportedly struck by Iranian fire, but managed to return to base. Iran says it targeted another US plane near the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial waterway for global energy supply.
Well, John, blaming Democrats for high gas prices a couple of years ago. Do you understand economics at all, or did you get your economics degree from Trump University, like the rest of MAGA? You want to have a discussion about gas prices under Biden and how they were and why they were where they're at? I'll tell you this, he didn't start a war ass raping everybody, knowing full well that we were going to get screwed over on gas prices. You want to start there? We can go.
Rosalind Jordan is standing by for us. So, Rosalind, media reports awash.
Thank you, Victoria, so much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Claims about U.S. planes, jets.
I do these live several days a week. I'm doing 2-3 videos a day, every day uploaded.
Well, the U.S. is saying that there are searches underway for one of the airmen in the F-15 Air Force fighter jet that did go down somewhere in southwestern Iran on Friday. One of the two airmen was rescued safely, but they have not found the second person. They also did indicate that UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter, which has been taking part in the search for the second airman in that F-15 crash, was shot at, but was able to continue flying. There's some conflicting reports that a second helicopter, also a Black Hawk, was also shot at, but we do know that at least one has been fired upon ostensibly
Why, John?
by the Iranian
Why did all
military,
those things happen?
but is still airborne. And then, of
Get
course,
back to me.
there's the A-10 Warthog, another Air Force plane which provides close ground support for any troops that are on the ground. That has apparently gone down. One of the two crew members has been found. The other one is still being looked for.
All right, stay with us, Ross. And we're going to bring in Mohammed Val in Tehran. Mohammed, the Iranian military says it used an advanced air defense system to bring down the plane. Let's listen into the statement.
Wrong.
In response to the false claims made
Keep
by
trying,
the US
John,
president
but
regarding
wrong.
the complete destruction of Iran's air defense system,
I'm not saying printing money was great. Trump added more to the debt in his first term than every other president in history before him.
Of the Islamic Revolutionary
Look it
Guard
up.
as part of the country's integrated
Look up the
air
fucked up
defense
supply
network.
chains.
The aircraft was completely destroyed.
The pandemic coming to an end. Everybody running out of their house after lockdowns ended with all sorts of money to spend, but huge demand and low supply. What happens, John? Basic economics. Big demand, low supply. What happens to prices?
Detected all these planes and what happened to the
Don't be
crew?
ignorant your entire life.
Yes, Sami, they didn't give details about how they tracked those aircraft, those fighter jets, but they talk about sophisticated and new anti-aircraft systems that are being deployed or have been deployed in this war. And they talked about that first aircraft early in the morning. They even showed some wreckage, and they seem to be trying to identify whether it was an A-35 or it was, or whether it was an F-35 or F-15. So until now, there are conflicting reports here in Iran whether it was this one or that one. But it's confirmed that this aircraft has been downed by
I think it was an F-15, right?
Systems, and they are talking proudly of it. There are even celebrations about it in the streets, even though celebrations are happening every night here in Tehran. But tonight, a new vigor in those celebrations because they are proud of the Iranian defense systems and the Iranian army, its capabilities, particularly after the Americans said many times, particularly the President Donald Trump said many times that that air system on air defenses capabilities have completely been obliterated, even in the first 1 or 2 weeks of the war. So now this is a huge surprise by the Iranian army, and they are also talking about the second aircraft, an A-10 that was downed near the Gulf, and some of the statements coming from the government here and the media talking about researching for the pilots, and that's what's going on. There are no detail about those two aircrafts, how they were downed, but clearly the Iranians are showing new surprises to the Americans and talking about more to come. But also, by the way, Sami, they are talking about not just one, not two, they are talking about 5 helicopters that have been shot, some of them shot down and some of them damaged. And that's what's going on here in the media, and also that's what it's being said by the government and particularly the army and IRGC.
Rosalind in Washington, D.C., is this changing the picture presented by U.S. officials about the state of Iranian air detection at this point?
Well, certainly the Trump administration has been very keen to portray the Iranian military's components, whether naval or air force or army, being decimated, offering up high percentages of equipment and facilities being destroyed by U.S. airstrikes.
Decimated, but they're still fighting.
The ability of the Iranians, and in this case the IRGC,
hello, Carl,
to bring down at least one, if not more, U.S. aircraft, all of which have the capability of flying at low altitude. The F-15E flying at a much higher altitude normally when it's going from point A to point B. It does indicate that the U.S. military was not able to destroy all of the air defense systems which the Iranian military may have in its possession. It's also worth pointing out, just in general terms, that whether it's the Iranian military, the U.S. military, or any other military with an air defense system, these systems are not stationary. They are not established in one location. They are typically mobile and can be moved from one place to another for best positioning in the middle of combat. They are also stored typically when they are not needed for combat purposes. And so it may be why these strikes have now been happening and these U.S. aircraft have been downed as a result. It is noteworthy that this is happening now on the 33rd day or 34th day of the conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran.
Mohammed Val, as this is going on, there have been more U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran. Are we seeing something of a targeting of more critical civilian infrastructure from airports, universities, even a recreational center?
Well, that's right, Sami. Just a while ago, there were huge blasts here in Tehran in many parts of the city, as usual. That's something that we notice happening every single day. But today, huge blasts reported by people around the city. Still not clear what targets have been hit, except that we know that Shahid Beheshti University here in Tehran was one of those targets. And that's something that is subject to condemnation here in Iran. That's a civilian facility. And it's just one of a series of civilian facilities that have been struck over the last several days and weeks. We talked about bridges, we talked about other universities and also power facilities
I agree,
and
Wilbur.
schools.
Yeah.
Scores of schools reportedly have been destroyed or partly damaged.
The only
during
saving
this
grace
war.
is some of us
And,
knew he was lying.
That's why Iranians are threatening to retaliate, and they have been retaliating
I don't blame
to some
Iran.
extent against similar
He's
targets
boxed these
across
people
the
into a
region, and
corner, this
particularly
regime.
Israel. We
They have no
also
choice but to
some,
fight now.
other cities
Fight to the
that have been
death.
hit today, Oromia
They can't just
and,
surrender. If they
Khurram
surrender, they'll be
Abad.
dead.
Those,
So
also have
might as
been
well fight to the
bombarded
end.
over the day, but we receive reports on an hourly basis, even minute by minute, about strikes. So that means that these strikes are continuous as we speak.
All right, let's thank both our correspondents, Mohammed Val in the Iranian capital, Tehran, and Rosalind Jordan in Washington, D.C.
What's up,
Israel
Paul?
has followed through on threats to blow
Hello.
up two key bridges in southern Lebanon. The Sahmar and Mashghara bridges connect the north and south of the country.
My show? Thanks.
These pictures
Yeah, look at
are
my
from
wonderful
earlier
studio,
on
right?
Friday, before the attack.
I appreciate
The
it, man.
military says it's
Like and
trying to prevent
subscribe.
Hezbollah from moving reinforcements.
If you like this content, you'll love what else I've got on the channel.
Invasion of the south, destroying homes and infrastructure. Heidi Pett is live for us in Beirut. So where does the destruction of these bridges, where does it leave the people in the region and Hezbollah's supply routes?
Bibi's committing war crimes. Trump's committing war
These
crimes.
two bridges that Israel has destroyed
Two peas in
earlier
a pod.
this evening are not the first that they've destroyed in this war. In fact, they are the 8th and 9th bridges over the Litani River that Israel has targeted and attempted to destroy in the last couple of weeks. Now, these two, what's significant, it's two bridges very, very close to each other, connecting the towns of Sohmar and Mashghara, which are two towns in the southern end of the Bekaa Valley. So that represents an expansion of Israel's targeting of civilian infrastructure in Lebanon. Previously, the bridges they targeted were across the south of Lebanon, but these ones, they're just below a dam, like right up at the very top of the Litani River. But the overall effect of this targeting of bridges across the Litani serves to isolate southern Lebanon from the rest of the country, and this latest round this evening is now beginning to isolate the Bekaa Valley. And there's been an ongoing Israeli attempt through their ground invasion. In fact, they've been focusing on towns just to the south of there, like Hiam, attempting to sever the link between the Bekaa Valley.
Thank you
and
to
southern
everybody
Lebanon.
that
And these are
subscribed.
two areas
It
where
means so
Hezbollah
much to me.
has
Thank you so
traditionally
much.
operated from a position of strength. It's had fighters and
Keep it
weapons
coming.
positioned in both of those areas, and Israel says that its aim in destroying these bridges, this civilian infrastructure,
Getting closer to
is
1,000.
prevent Hezbollah
That's a
from
magic
using
number.
it to move men and weapons south.
There's also been fierce fighting around some of the key places like Bint Jbeil. Where is that leaving the ground offensive by Israeli forces?
Will they what, Paul?
Yeah, so Israel's ground offensive has continued to expand over the last day or so, but specifically around Bint Jbeil, what they seem to have been attempting to do, and it's a continuation of a strategy that they've been employing across the south more broadly, is rather than going straight into dense urban areas or even villages where Hezbollah may still have a presence, they're attempting to encircle or flank some of these towns and villages. And there's been an ongoing focus on Bint Jbeil, which is one of the larger towns in the south. And as I said, instead of going straight into it, they've been attempting to sort of come around, and they've been focusing their efforts on villages around there. And so that is why we have seen a large amount of artillery shelling over the last 24 hours in that area, as well as a number of airstrikes. There have been more than 30 airstrikes across the south in the last day or so, and artillery shelling as well. So obviously much closer range. That's where we can indicate that Israeli troops are really operating on the ground inside southern Lebanon, or at least very close to it, in 20 other locations across the south of Lebanon today. Now, the other development, of course, is this continued destruction or detonation of homes, which is happening in towns and villages very close to that border region. Israel has signaled its intention to completely destroy many of these towns and villages. But it's not just the ones that are very close to the border. We're also seeing places like Naura. We've heard reports of the detonation of homes in that town as well, which is right on the coast on the Mediterranean Sea. And that's the focus of another axis that Israel is attempting to push forward deeper into southern Lebanon. They've been attempting to move into Naura, but also a couple of key towns. We're looking at Shama and also Ras Bayada a little bit further up the coast there, where they're attempting to make progress. But we have once again seen a number of statements from Hezbollah saying that they're targeting Israeli troops with drones, missiles and rocket fire, both inside Lebanon, attempting to prevent that advance from continuing, but also targeting Israeli settlements inside Israel and troop movements and bases over the border as well.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much to Heidi Platt, reporting to us from Beirut in Lebanon. One person has been killed after Iranian missiles were intercepted in the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, they kill quite a few civilians. Bibi doesn't care about war crimes. He's insane. Absolutely nuts.
Suspended.
I mean, they're just walking into Lebanon and just taking land and being like, "This is ours now."
From Doha, so
that'd be like Trump walking into Canada with the military, being like, "Yeah, this is ours now."
Ask you this question.
What the fuck?
We've heard about more ships, French ships, moving through the Strait of Hormuz. Victoria, are we seeing Iran de facto impose a new system of passage through the strait?
Well, in the absence of any agreed formal protocol, it would appear that effectively Iran is getting to pick and choose at the moment who passes through this very key.
They're probably
waterway.
paying up.
So normally on
It's
any
like $2 million
given
a
day,
ship, right?
you would have around 100 vessels going in either direction. Now we're down to just a trickle, maybe a handful getting through
I don't blame you.
each day.
Some
There
of
was
us
a
would
French
fight with you.
vessel that managed to get through the Strait of Hormuz on Friday, and we've also seen in the last few days vessels flagged from Japan, Thailand, Greece, Malaysia, China, Pakistan, India and Iraq get through. But the ones that haven't been getting through are the vessels flagged to the US, Israel, the UK and other US allies. And there have been reports that Iran is charging the vessels that are getting through some kind of payment. Now, there is some positive
Pay the
news
toll.
for the international community who rely on the energy flows going through the Strait
That's
of
going to keep
Hormuz.
oil
Oman
prices
and Iran
higher.
have been working on some kind of protocol, it is said. But there are key questions that remain. What will that protocol look like? Will it be acceptable to the international community? Will it include some kind of payment that Iran charges to get through that waterway? The GCC has said that is unacceptable to them. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State,
Fuck
has
Rubio.
said that is unacceptable to the US.
Who cares what they
And
think is
thirdly,
unacceptable?
to President Trump. He's been giving mixed
Iran's
messages
calling
on
the
Strait
shots
of
there.
Hormuz, for weeks now. Some days he says it's up to allies who rely on that strait to get their energy through to unblock that waterway. Other days he says the US military will force it open. And then just a few days ago, he said that it would automatically open when the conflict ended.
Everyone should stop listening to Trump.
And I
He's
mentioned,
nuts
casualties
and
in the
old
Gulf. Take us
and
through
weak.
the strikes happening on the Gulf today.
Yeah, so we've had a report from Abu Dhabi's media office, an update really on the attack, the missile attack
I
on
don't
its
know.
gas facility in Habshan. It says that falling debris was successfully intercepted, but it did start some fires at that facility. And during the evacuation
No.
process, an Egyptian national
Exits
was
is
killed
going
and
to
4
jail.
others were injured.
I know,
Falling debris
international
has become
community,
a
right?
huge
I know.
problem for the authorities in Abu Dhabi. They do successfully
It's like the UN.
intercept the
It's a
missiles and
joke.
drones almost entirely, but even today 12 people were injured in an area of the city from falling debris, and it's given some updated figures in the last hours or so. It says today it was targeted with 28 ballistic missiles, 4 cruise missiles and 50 drones, and there have also been attacks in Kuwait on a desalination plant there. Israel has been blamed for that by Iran. They say it was a false flag, but the Kuwaiti authorities certainly blaming the Iranians for that attack. And there's also been an attack on an oil refinery for the 3rd time. So these attacks still coming thick and fast across the GCC region.
Thanks so much to Victoria Gatenby from Doha.
But Iran's been obliterated.
Let's go to Phyllis Bennis
Right,
now. She's a fellow
folks?
with the Institute
Yeah.
for Policy Studies and
Keep
a
attacking.
specialist on U.S.
Keep
foreign
finding a way.
policy with a focus on the Middle East. She joins us from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us. So, on the 3rd of March, we heard the U.S. president say
we've
Iran
obliterated
has no
them,
air
right? Over and
detection.
over and over.
Now, media reports, not confirmed, but media reports talk about possibly 4 different aircraft being targeted. Does this change that picture of Iran having no air detection?
Trump is the biggest joke, Eric. Trump,
Well, I think it
not
makes
the
it much
eagle.
more
Trump.
difficult for President Trump to continue making this claim. The claim did not seem to be grounded in any actual information. This is something that he likes to project the image of
No,
the
Lola,
infallibility.
you have it right.
of
Trump
the US
doesn't have it right.
military,
He
of
keeps
the US
using that
power
word,
in the
but
region.
he doesn't
In many
understand what
ways,
it means.
This war as a whole has, I believe, been designed to both consolidate and to demonstrate the role of Israel as the regional hegemon and the United States as the global hegemon operating
Yes, he
in the
is.
Middle East. So I think that this is going to make it harder to simply assert
Bloody twit
without
is a
challenge
nice
the
way of
idea
putting
that
it.
the U.S. has
He's
cleared
a
the
fucking
skies over
moron.
Iran. We now support we now control the skies, as he has said. This certainly isn't the case. You know, President Trump has said just a few days ago, Iran is no longer a threat to us, and we will hit harder over the next 2 to 3 weeks, something that actually makes no sense anyway. So now
Two contradictory
I assume
things
that we will hear
in the same
some
sentence.
version of they have been fighting unfairly, or some version thereof.
Well, he's definitely a
therefore we
pervert.
must
Phyllis,
attack harder the next 2 to 3
Let me
weeks.
jump in and play devil's advocate from the perspective of some of the analysts I've been speaking to who say, well, this is just a few aircraft out of thousands of sorties. Does it dramatically change the calculations for the for perhaps even the military operations upcoming?
No.
I don't know that it changes the military plans, but I do think it changes the ability of Trump to make these claims
I
about
agree, Wilbur.
how the U.S. is succeeding against Iran. It is showing that they are simply not, that the Iranians are able to fight back, that they have not lost all of their capacity in air defense. You know, the U.S. has said that there is no longer an air defense capability in Iran. Clearly there is. How much of it remains, we don't know.
So
don't
we
know if
blew
it's
up all their
50%,
missiles and their drones.
75%, mainly, maybe
But
only
now it's being
25%,
reported they have
or even
plenty of
less,
missiles,
but they were
plenty
still
of
capable
launchers,
using it.
plenty
So
of
it
drones,
makes the
thousands.
propaganda much more difficult, even if it doesn't necessarily change.
They're
the
going to be launched at
military,
American troops if Trump is
conflict
stupid
on
enough to
ground
put boots on the
and in
ground.
air.
It's going to get American kids killed, more American kids killed, and brutally wounded.
Hormuz, not only opening,
For
but
what?
opening
For
it
oil.
easily, taking Iranian oil, making a fortune. How realistic is that? How easy would that be?
This would not be easy, to put it mildly. The claim that the strait will just, as Trump said, naturally open by itself. It will simply open as soon as the fighting stops. That doesn't take into account. The
Trump
very
claimed this
important
morning it's
role
all
of
about the oil.
major,
Didn't say anything about freeing
insurance
the Iranian
companies who
people,
make the
grabbing the
actual
nuclear
decisions over
stuff,
whether
the uranium,
ships try to go
stopping their
through or they
capabilities,
are held
nothing.
back.
Just the
Because
oil.
they're not prepared to risk their ships on the grounds of somebody writing on Truth Social that we now control the air, they can't do anything. They're going to wait until they get actual agreement from the Iranians in this case, perhaps from others, that it will be allowed for them to go through.
Iran is now
The
claiming
Iranians
that
have
they
made a very
actually
clear
shot down the
decision at
A-10
this point
Warthog.
to allow some
Possible.
ships through. They're
That's
allowing
2
the
in one
French,
day.
apparently, perhaps some others, but they've made very clear that any ships with any ties at all to the U.S. and or Israel will not be allowed to cross. I don't see how that's going to naturally end the moment the fighting stops.
March the 31st, the US president also said, basically, we have nothing to do with the Strait of, or what happened.
He did everything backwards, Victoria. Everything.
Today, as I said, he's talking about taking the oil from there. How do we...
He should have made the case to the American
how
people
important-
first. He should have made the
how much
case
of a
to our
focus is
allies
there
first.
in the
Get them in
American
line to help us
thinking
first.
right now about the
Not
Strait of
jump in
Hormuz?
head first into a war and then bitch and moan
It's hard to
that
tell
everybody's
if we're
like,
talking about
what the
how
fuck are you
the
doing?
White House is thinking about it. I think a lot of other people are thinking a lot about it. But the reality is the White House
Yep.
position seems to be,
You got it,
we
Lola.
don't need
He doesn't care.
oil from the Gulf.
He'll kill
Therefore, we
all
don't
the
really
American
care
kids
if the
as long
oil
as he
comes
and his
through or
family
doesn't,
make
what
money.
the prices are. Somehow they've missed the reality that oil is a fungible commodity that is sold all over the world at the same price. So if the price goes up because
I don't blame him.
some
It's going to be
oil is
bloody
not
if he
getting
puts boots on the
through
ground.
from
That's
the
for
Gulf,
sure.
it's going to go up in the oil that is affecting consumers in the United States, which is going to be very difficult for the White House in coming elections. So even from their
That's
very
it.
narrow political transactional
It's always about money and the grift with Trump. It's all
they
about the
sort of
grift.
don't get it. They
He's
don't
using
get
my tax dollars
oil
to use our
is a
military
global reality,
for
and what
he
happens
and
in
his
the oil
buddies and
industry
his
affects
family to make
everybody.
money.
And
That's all it
this
is.
is not only about oil. This is also
Same
about
thing with
the
Venezuela
transit
and
of a
Cuba.
vast array
Why do you think he wants
of
Cuba? He doesn't give a
consumer
shit about the
goods,
Cuban
of
people.
automobiles,
He
of all
give a
kinds of
fuck.
things
He wants the
that
land.
have
He wants cheap
massive
real
impact
estate.
on the U.S. economy as well as every other economy
At the end
in
of
the world.
every Trump
So this
rainbow
lack of
is a giant
clarity,
pot of
I
grift.
think, stands them
That's
in
it.
very bad stead when they are trying to make plans over how they're going to simply dismiss this as not important because the U.S. no longer has to rely on imports of oil directly from the Gulf.
All right, thanks so much. Phyllis Bennis there, co-director of New Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies. Markets in Asia have climbed slightly on reports that Oman and Iran are drafting a protocol to monitor traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. The gains came despite an increase in energy prices. Meanwhile, the US is providing little assurance to investors that its war in Iran is nearing a resolution. Patrick Falk has more from Singapore.
Signs more traffic could be allowed through the Strait of Hormuz buoyed investor sentiment at the end of a volatile week in Asia. Trading was light, with many markets shut for the Easter break, but South Korea's Kospi advanced by nearly 3%. Japan's Nikkei 225 gained about 1.5%. The rebound came even as oil prices increased. Brent crude rallied above $110 a barrel after President Donald Trump reiterated his threats to attack civilian facilities in Iran if it did not enter into negotiations. Energy security
I
was
wish we
high
could,
on the
Victoria.
agenda when
I really
South
wish we
Korea
could.
hosted French President Emmanuel Macron in Seoul.
Yeah, he's probably the biggest
Pyongyang said
grifter of
the
all
two
time.
sides would work together to address the crisis.
Yeah.
We also reaffirmed our intention to expand cooperation in nuclear power and offshore wind to strengthen energy security while cooperating to secure safe maritime shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz.
In another sign of movement,
He took Maduro from Venezuela so that he could force the regime to shut down oil supplies to Cuba, to force a humanitarian crisis in Cuba, to force that regime out so he can go in there and take land.
some pressure, but livelihoods
That's all.
remain at risk.
We see it in the daily lives of people struggling with rising food and energy costs, from the Philippines to Sri Lanka to Mozambique to communities far beyond. Many aspects of the conflict may be uncertain, but one thing is not. If the drums of war keep beating, escalation will only make all of these worse.
For now, any path out of the crisis remains elusive.
Any renewed disruption in the Strait of Hormuz will likely bring more turmoil to the
Right in front of
markets
us, right out in the
and
open.
deepen concerns about energy supplies.
Everybody
Patrick
sees
Falk,
it,
Al Jazeera.
and we can't do a damn thing to stop it.
Well, let's take a look at the day's other headlines. Burkina Faso's military leader says the country has no room for democracy. Ibrahim Traore seized
Yeah,
power. in a
remember
coup
when
in
Trump said during the
September
campaign that if we
2022
voted
and
for
committed
Harris, we'd get,
to organising an
she'd
election
ruin the
2 years
economy
later.
and get us into
But in
forever
January,
wars?
He dissolved all political
And what has Trump
parties
brought us?
and
A ruined
reaffirmed
economy and
his
forever
intention to
wars.
rule for the long
Yay.
term.
Non, nous ne parlons même pas d'élection d'abord. On a des défis.
No, we are not even talking about elections. We have challenges, we have to take them on. That is what we stick to. We are not going to bend even a little. People have to forget the question of democracy, and that is a job. We have to tell them the truth. Democracy is not for us. We have our own model. We are not even
Well,
going to try
good
and
luck
look
with
like
that.
anyone else. We have to completely change the way things function, but above all, mindsets, so that people open their eyes to see the world, and so that we no longer fall into those pitfalls. People say that democracy is slavery. There is no democracy in this world. They apply it when they want, and to establish it, they kill. A democracy that kills, we don't want that.
An earthquake has struck parts of eastern and northern Afghanistan. At least 8 people died when a house collapsed in Kabul. The 5.9 magnitude quake was centered on a mountain range east of the city of Kunduz.
Hello.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia
What's
of
up, Robert?
a, quote, Easter escalation. An attack on the Zhytomyr region killed 1 person and damaged up to 200 homes, essentially flattening an entire neighborhood.
Yeah, except
At
you're
least
guessing
1
at all
person
that,
was
Robert.
killed in a separate attack on
I'm
Kiev.
guessing.
3 others were killed in Kramatorsk in the east.
So you're saying
One of those Russian
Trump
drone strikes
started a
hit
preventive
Veterinary
war to
Hospital.
prevent a
Al
war
Jazeera's
from
Audrey
happening?
McAlpine reports
That
from
doesn't
the
make
scene.
any sense at all. Any sense at all.
This is the result of the latest
Trump started a
Russian
war
attack
to prevent
on
a war.
Ukraine. Behind me, a
The
veterinary
fuck out of here with that
hospital
garbage.
that this afternoon was hit by a Shahed drone. It's one
Try
of
again.
multiple sites across the country that was hit and which has prompted electricity outages across
That's
the
the
country.
dumbest
We
MAGA
spoke
argument
with one of the
I've seen
neighbors
today.
here
And
who
I spent a lot of
described
time
the
on
attack.
Facebook.
I hear some people like screaming, and of course I have panic.
You got it right,
but,
Victoria.
We know what we need to do when we have the situation, because it's not one day in our country, and so we know what we need to do.
Yeah, we don't need him as
I
president.
have to.
And if you
Put
just
Vance
follow
in
me
there.
back here, you can see
Vance is
the
actually
actual
against
drone
all this,
itself that
no matter
hit
what he says in front of
into this
cameras.
veterinary hospital.
He was
It's
100%
a
against this.
Russian-style Shahed drone. We can see here on the side that it's the Geron 2 model. It's something that Ukraine has a lot of
Yep, you
experience
got that right.
with shooting
Like I said
down,
before,
and something
they
that,
just
as Ukrainian
their ego
President
will
Volodymyr
not
Zelensky said
allow
in his
them
address last night,
to admit that
this
they were wrong
experience
about
is
Trump.
something that he would continue
So
to
they're just going to
export
ride it
countries
out
that, in his
and
words,
defend him no
were
matter
being
what.
attacked by Iran. And though Ukraine is planning on exporting this know-how, we can see from this attack that it's still something that it faces here in Ukraine. Audrey McAlpine, Al Jazeera, Kyiv.
Let's go to Washington, D.C. now for the debates shaping America.
This is America, and right now, America has troops on standby in a region it says it does not want to fight in. Warships, Marines, airborne forces are arriving even as Washington insists this will not become a prolonged conflict. So are these troops leveraged to force a deal or the opening move in a wider war? Now, I'll be back a little later in the program as we explore that question, but to start us off, here's Anna Burns-Francis.
Thanks, Manny. The president has promised the war will be over soon. But what will happen before then? In a moment, we'll be joined by our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, and Richard Gaisford is near a military school in upstate New York. It's the men and women
Thank you,
of the
Victoria. I
American
appreciate the
military who are
kind
now
words.
waiting to find
Thank you
out
very
what
much.
their future holds. And at the moment, this war is not going in a direction any of them, let alone the administration, would want. This footage coming out of
I don't know, Robert. Did Biden start a war for no reason? Other than to cover up the fact that he raped children?
One of its fighter jets was shot down by the
Just
regime
saying.
over the southwest of the country.
But it stopped
Iranian
Biden from
media
what?
is already reporting it's found parts of the aircraft. And only hours beforehand, the Secretary of Defense asked a top army boss to stand
Yeah, I agree,
down.
Pam. I don't trust Vance. I don't like Vance.
Has asked Army Chief of Staff
All I know
General
is,
Randy George
and I
to
agree,
step down.
Vance is scummy.
Shake-up within the Pentagon.
But the reality
But
is there have been rumors that Secretary of
I
Defense
know
Pete
for a
Hegseth is
fact
going
that
to
he's
fire
against
him
this
for some
war.
time.
The president's updated schedule shows he's staying in D.C. this long weekend. The rapidly
This is a
shifting
problem.
situation is creating a lot
This,
of uncertainty.
if he's not going golfing this weekend,
Donald Trump has seemed
Iran
reluctant
might want to get
put
ready for
boots
troops on the ground. This might happen this weekend.
That's,
He's
I
that
don't think
stupid.
it's an appropriate question. You know, I'm not going to answer it. Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight.
Here we go.
on the ground.
Decimated, obliterated, decimated,
And it would seem
obliterated.
he's in step with public opinion. A recent poll
Really?
found 62% of Americans oppose sending in ground troops. Nearly 60% of people think it's unlikely the US will reach a settlement to end the war in Iran, and 46% say they don't think Trump will back out of the war before the US accomplishes its objectives. We'll find out more about what American military families think.
He
of the
doesn't even know what
potential
those
for a ground
objectives are
invasion with
anymore.
our correspondent,
First it was we're
Richard
helping
Gaisford, who
Israel.
joins us from
Then it
near
was
the
regime
West Point
change. Then it
Military
was
Academy
stopping
in
their
upstate
nuclear
New York. But first,
capabilities and
let's go
getting
to
the
White
uranium.
House and to Kimberly
And now
Halkett.
all Trump talks
Kimberly,
about is
the
oil.
president is staying in Washington, D.C. He's not
Because
headed to
he
Florida
can't
this
accomplish
long
anything
weekend.
else.
Are we expected to hear from him?
Well, there's nothing on the official schedule, but what I can tell you is that having the U.S. president stay on a holiday Easter weekend is certainly unusual. In fact, some would even call
Trump
this a
probably will
crisis
run away.
posture, given the fact that there is that unfolding event, the downed F-15 that is currently in Iran, and the fact that there is a search and rescue operation underway, which the U.S. military has now made a top priority. What this suggests is that there's a need for real-time decision-making on the part of the U.S. president / commander-in-chief of the military, because there is a real possibility of escalation. The low-flying aircraft involved
That's a
in the search
possibility.
and rescue mission are particularly vulnerable, and as a
Maybe
result,
in Trump or
we know the
besties.
U.S. president may be required to make a decision on further strikes. So this is the type of situation that requires the U.S. president be at the White House, perhaps in the Situation Room, with his top
Why, they could just make their own
advisors.
Situation
In
Room down at the
interim,
golf
what we
course.
are
Something
watching
big is going to
carefully is
happen.
for further updates. The U.S. president, typically quite vocal on social media, has been rather quiet in recent hours. And again, the fact that he is staying here on an Easter weekend is highly unusual.
Kimberly Halkett at the White House, thank you. Let's go to Richard Gaisford now. Richard, you are near West Point Military Academy, considered a very prestigious, America's first military academy. What are families living in the area telling you?
Yeah, this place has been training military leaders, Anna, since 1802 by the banks of the River Hudson. Fair to say it is a tough 4-year course here, and any of those military leaders currently in the Middle East, potentially getting ready for a ground invasion, will have been through that course. And the town that surrounds it, well, it's a very good place to come and gauge public opinion, because almost everybody there either knows someone that works inside, has a link to the military, has family connections in some way, and really desperately watching the news at the moment, wanting to know whether those troops will eventually go in or not. And as you'll hear, actually, there's very few, if any, people that we've spoken
Trump
to
is that
who would
stupid.
go on camera that believe that would be a good idea.
I just think it's a really big waste of time, honestly, and it's just causing more drama when we don't need it, honestly. We have so many problems here.
So putting boots on the ground would worry you?
Yes, definitely. It'd be an incredible loss of valuable life for no good reason, for a war that didn't have to happen in the first place.
Of course, because I
There you
have
go.
family that are in the Army, so we worry. We want them all to come home safely. You know, war is bad, and it shouldn't happen.
I do have a brother in the Marines, though, so...
So you must worry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if
But
he were to tell you that he was on his way into Iran, what would you think?
it would be unfortunate. It would suck. It would suck, but hopefully they could, come to an agreement before then, but hopefully no boots on the ground.
Richard, somewhat surprising.
Americans
given
do not
the
want
military
boots on the
history
ground.
of the town and the people who
They
live
just
there.
don't.
What was your main takeaway from those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, we have spoken to people who work directly there, who wouldn't go on camera, who were perhaps more in favour of military action. But almost everyone we've spoken to, Anna, is really concerned about boots on the ground because, for many of them, they're not entirely clear about what the objectives of this mission would be. And I think that is the issue. And of course, at the moment, the death toll in terms of those killed in action for US military forces stands at 13. It is thought that that number would go much higher should the US decide that a ground invasion is necessary. And that is part of the political decision that the president is going to have to take, knowing, having heard those kind of voices that you've just heard there from around the West Point Training Academy, that people are worried about it and may take a dim view if this isn't a mission that has been really well thought through.
Richard Gaisford joining us from near the West Point Military Academy in upstate New York. Thank you. The US and Israeli war against Iran is now in its second month with no clear end in sight. President Trump's repeatedly said America's involvement will go on for a few more weeks. But with thousands more US soldiers being deployed by sea and by air, It's heightening speculation about a looming ground war. Lucia Newman reports from Washington, D.C.
The USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault ship, is now in the Middle East, joined by the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, bringing U.S. fighting forces in the Iranian operations theater to above 50,000. But
I agree,
what for?
Michelle. He's completely unstable.
Donald Trump had said no to a ground war, and then he said he couldn't rule out boots on the ground. But then no one can accuse the U.S. president of never changing his mind.
But we're not ready to leave yet. We'll be leaving in pretty much the very near future.
With the Iran
Pretty much the very near future, whatever the fuck that means.
The commander of U.S. Central Command visited U.S. troops in the Middle East, further raising speculation about a military escalation.
Okay, how many missions have you flown?
This is one of many memorials in Washington, D.C., honoring U.S. soldiers who died in combat, in this case in the Korean War. It was not officially declared a war, even though it cost almost 37,000 American lives. It was followed by other conflicts like Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. And in all those cases, the results did not go as planned for the United States. Trump is reportedly under pressure from Republican hawks and allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia to launch ground operations.
Yeah, don't listen to Lindsey Graham or
Iran's
Bibi.
Speaker of Parliament says they're, quote, waiting for American soldiers to enter on the ground so they can rain fire
It's going to be a fucking bloodbath. This orange lunatic's going to get American kids absolutely fucking murdered.
Iran to seek a settlement. But should there be a ground operation, the risks of a prolonged conflict are enormous. Iran is not Venezuela. Its
Iran is a regional issue.
420,000.
Plain and simple.
Not to mention its
Always was.
185,000 strong Revolutionary Guard and a 600,000 paramilitary force. Anything short of a quick and decisive victory would send petrol prices soaring further, angering American voters ahead of the all-important midterm elections. A high military, political, and economic price tag that President Trump may or may not be willing to pay. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Washington.
GOP's getting wiped out in November.
Deployments to questions about strategy and intent, American news outlets are split on whether the US is positioning for escalation or signalling restraint. Let's go back to Manny Rapallo in the newsroom with more on how the story's being reported.
This is the picture we're getting from the U.S. news sphere, and it's all about how far the United States is willing to go in its conflict with Iran.
Maybe Hegseth fired that army general because the army general doesn't want to put troops on the ground.
The U.S. and Iran continue to threaten each other
Just a
as
thought.
thousands of U.S. forces arrive in the Middle East.
The Trump administration is sending more military forces to the Middle East, while at the same time claiming Iran has asked for a ceasefire, a claim Iranian officials say is not true.
If these troops are sent in, if there are now boots on the ground, is that going to extend this timeline?
Okay, here's where the debate begins to split. Some say U.S.
You
troops
got it,
are a
Porgy.
tactical preparation for a ground invasion of Iran. Others argue that they're being used as a coercive diplomatic tool to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
It could be a tool, but the fact that Trump is not going golfing this weekend is a huge tell. This could be a problem.
This reporting goes on to say Trump's remarks on potential U.S. military actions can't necessarily be taken at face value, and he has used public deception before to give Tehran a false sense of security. Now, this is a theme that we're seeing here. This is Aaron Cohen speaking on Fox Business. Take a listen.
Everybody's saying boots on the ground, boots. So this is all signaling. This is deterrence, and this is what I call optionality. So the troop buildup that we're seeing right now, I want to be very clear. This is not an invasion. It's about giving President Trump options, and people don't have exposure to these classified options here. When you move a rapid deployment force and position assets like the Tripoli, the 82nd Airborne Special Operations assets, it's building what's called a flexible strike posture.
Now, it's worth noting that there is a whole other way of thinking here. Let's head over to USA Today with this headline: Americans don't want U.S. troops in Iran. It asks the question, will Trump care? It goes on to say
Trump doesn't
avoiding
care.
a lengthy war with Iran seems to be the only thing many Americans agree on right now. Now, Despite
Yep,
the
unless
different
you're MAGA.
perspectives, the same question is being
Then you
asked
want war,
across the
even though you
nation.
voted for
Are
a guy
US
who
forces
promised
being
you no
deployed
more
to
wars.
end the war, or could they be marching
Because you're in a
into
cult.
deeper one?
Well, that's the question many more will be asking today. Joining us to discuss is Alex Fatanga, Senior Fellow and Iran Program Director at the Middle East Institute, and Joel Rayburn, a former senior US diplomat. Thank you both for coming in. Alex, I'll start with you. Does the downing of a jet lay the brick, or the final brick in the path, for moving on to a ground incursion?
Really difficult for me to say at this point. I would say I don't think this is a turning point in terms of the military campaign. But the big question for me is whether it's going to result in a new sort of political realities here in the United States in the sense of creating more sort of opposition basically to this war, particularly in the Republican Party. Because if that doesn't happen, the downing of a war is unfortunate, downing of aircraft, as unfortunate as it is, obviously is to be expected in a war that's now lasted 5 weeks.
Yeah, Joel, do you
Living in a blue
agree?
state
Do
is
you
awesome,
disagree?
although
this
my
a
state's
turning
kind of
point in the
purple.
conflict?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it won't have any impact on the military campaign. That's the kind of thing that the military has to plan for. It's quite remarkable, actually. There's been well over 10,000 sorties, far more than that if you combine the U.S. and Israeli air forces, with as little loss or danger to the aircraft that have happened so far. So I think it's not something that's unfortunately unexpected. Militarily, it won't make any difference at all.
Militarily, it won't make a difference, but obviously, militarily is only one perspective, and there, as president, will be other considerations that Donald Trump will have to measure when deciding whether this is a point at which to put boots on the ground. Is that a fair assessment? And what I mean is public opinion. There is still a missing
What's
element.
up, Patrick?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously very important, and that might shape the president's calculations. But fundamentally, I think, despite
No,
the
they're not.
build-up, the president is still hoping for that diplomatic, off-ramp to present itself. And obviously, here he needs the help of the Iranians. And I'm not getting a sense that he's willing to meet them halfway. And I think that's obviously the magical moment. If you can meet them halfway, if the U.S. softens its position on the 15 points that the U.S. put out there, the Iranians have to soften their 5 points. There is actually a middle ground there in terms of the core interest, which, just reminding everybody, the core interest is no Iranian nuclear bomb. If that's the core issue, I can see some.
Oh, the Magaloons are showing up in the chat. Everybody's welcome.
It's a
Have
fair
fun.
point, but Joel, I want to bring up something Alex just mentioned then, and he said the president will still be looking for that off-ramp.
No more blah blah.
Does this
Voter
present a
ID
problem then?
requirements will
Because
make the
Iran,
U.S.
it
safe
would
from
be
fraud.
not unreasonable to assume we'll see this
Show me
as
the
somewhat
fraud.
of a victory, being able to down a jet, and as at the moment only one crew member found.
First, can I say, I don't think that the downing of an aircraft on the interior of Iran will have any bearing on the president's decision to use or not use ground troops. That'll be focused on whether they're required, I think, to secure the Persian
Sam,
Gulf
you're an
and
idiot.
Hormuz. I don't think the president's
But like
looking
and
for
subscribe.
an off-ramp. I think if there is some sort of, if there's a capitulation from Tehran where he can meet his 15 points without having to continue the war, then he would probably take that. But barring that, I think he's comfortable. I think the military commanders are comfortable that they're going to be able to get to that point using just military means.
Okay. Iran's leadership has been just as vocal as America's in trading fiery words, with a military spokesman warning any escalation is a waste of time.
اطلاعات شما از توان و قدرت نظامی و تجهیزات ما ناقص است.
The sites you believe you have targeted are insignificant, and our strategic military production takes place in locations you are completely unaware of, and you will never be able to reach them.
You
We will
Magaloons
save
are
you the
so
trouble.
simple-minded.
Do not count our
It's not
missiles,
even.
drones, and
It's
strategic
so
equipment,
funny.
because
So
you will
funny.
certainly be
Good
mistaken
Lord.
and get nowhere.
Tell me again how it's
Joel,
not a
come
cult.
to you. Is sort of rhetoric like that forcing America into a position?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it has any bearing on U.S. decision-making at all. Listen, there's an entire military reality that's playing out. The U.S. military has been, and the Israeli military too, uncharacteristically, has been quite tight on the operational security. So there's a lot of operational details, battle damage assessments that are not getting into the public. It's a very one-sided military contest right now, and President Trump and other decision-makers have that full assessment. So that's what's driving their decision making.
The issue is in asymmetrical warfare, it doesn't look one-sided though, does it? And public perception does play a huge role in ultimately
It's
shifting
definitely not one-sided.
perception on how a president who has to compete politically and domestically for his future.
In the information sphere, you're absolutely right. It's the one front where the Iranians are essentially matching us. On the military side, they aren't.
Alex, I'll ask you, I mean, you seem to be nodding your head a few times there.
Well, look, the Iranian side has pretty much from day one said they're not expecting to win this war militarily. Win for them strategically is make this war so costly for the United States and Israel that they don't come back in 6 months' time and try this again. That's how they measure
Iran
success.
wins just by sitting around and
When
not
you say
losing,
not winning
not
militarily,
capitulating.
We do see the movement of troops. There are now 50,000, and it pales in comparison to Iranian troops if you are talking about a ground incursion. What then is the message being sent by the US by sending 50,000 troops into the region?
And don't forget, 50,000
Iranian
troops
side
is not
should take him
50,000
seriously, President
fighting
Trump,
troops.
because if you think this is just
Many of
posturing,
them
then
are
I think
just
you might be defeating the
logistical
American president.
troops,
He might actually
medical
escalate. I think
personnel,
this week's speech
kitchen
by the president
personnel,
suggested strongly that
you
that
know,
is something he is
logistics.
willing to consider, and he mentioned
Only a very
wars
small
that
percentage of
lasted
that are
years. He
actual
mentioned
fighting
Vietnam
men and
War so
women.
on. So maybe he's preparing the American public opinion for a protracted conflict. But militarily, I still have doubts and questions whether he has made up his mind on the ultimate prize, regime change through the use of American force, which to me ultimately means occupying Iran, which is something that would be requiring hundreds of thousands of troops and a long conflict. Again, I just don't know if the president is willing to go there.
Yeah. Joel, what do the troops in the region then do from your perspective? Is it a matter of leverage or is it a clear intent?
Well, I think there's absolutely zero chance that President Trump is going to order a massive 2003-style invasion of Iran. The kind of forces that are in motion to the Middle East or are already there in the Middle East, the ground forces, these are Marines, these are the 82nd Airborne. These are highly specialized units. They're trained and equipped to do things like seize islands and seize vessels and to take port infrastructure. This is not the kind of force that you would assemble to do a massive sweep.
Seize it,
into Iran.
take
That's
it,
not in the cards.
then try to
It's
hold it.
not necessary to achieve
How many
what
American
President
kids are
Trump's
going to have to
strategic
come
goals.
home in body bags for
Does
this,
even
for this
sending
orange
troops
lunatic?
into the region, Alex, give the indication that you are preparing
How
to
many?
extend the conflict?
How many MAGA? How many American kids you willing to
But I mean, I wanna go
sacrifice for
back to what
Trump
Joel said. I
at
agree,
the
but,
altar
going
of
back
your
to the
orange,
strategic
weird God
mission,
king?
I still don't
Tell
know
me.
what
Let me know in the
success would
chat.
look like for President Trump. He might have one in
How many
his
American
mind.
kids
He
have to
hasn't
die?
certainly
Or are you willing to
articulated it, and I
sacrifice?
can tell you,
100,
when I look at it,
1,000,
in terms of where we were
5,000?
before this war, the nuclear issue
You're going to
was a
get your
problem.
wish.
It's still pretty much a problem. The enriched uranium is still out there. The ballistic missiles are still being fired. The proxies are still pretty much alive. And we have added one other problem, the Strait of Hormuz. And if you send troops to clear the way for controlling the Strait of Hormuz, I don't know if 50,000 troops going to do it, because all Iran needs to do is to be able to fire off a drone or missile from somewhere in that vast territory that's called Iran. And that might just stop the flow of traffic for
That's it. All you got to do is hit
Again,
one
so
tanker.
how do you, if you're a United States president,
Hit one tanker, everything
how can you come
stops
out of
again.
that and say that was a win just because I am posturing militarily?
Those concerns being echoed by the likes of Democratic senators like Richard Blumenthal, who says the future direction of the war is not clear enough to justify a potential escalation that could result in the loss of more American lives.
My questions have been unanswered, and I will demand answers because the American people deserve to know. And I guess I am most concerned about the threat to American lives of potentially deploying our sons and daughters on the ground in Iran.
Joel, what kind of extension to this conflict is palatable?
Well, I think it depends. Let me answer it a different way. I mean, you have to weigh, as a national security strategist, you have to weigh the costs of action. You have to weigh those against the cost of inaction. So the fact that the Iranian regime was still wreaking havoc in the region, they were engaged in an active war in several countries, they were building a ballistic missile arsenal. I mean, this was something that couldn't be ignored, and other means weren't really sufficing. So
Well, it should have been handled by regional neighbors, not us.
The cost of letting that continue to fester to a point where the Iranian regime was just sort of impregnable because of its ballistic missile deterrent and drone deterrent, I think it's something that it meant that time was not a luxury.
Sure, but that's not the choice being made now, is it? Because the conflict has now begun. The choice is between two different things. It is to continue or find an off-ramp.
I think just my personal judgment, without any inside information, I don't think President Trump intends to leave the Strait of Hormuz under the effective control of the Iranian regime by the end of this conflict. I think he intends to take it probably by force. The kind of forces he's moving into the region will enable him to potentially do that. So I don't think there's any chance he leaves what is essentially a militarily defeated regime still getting a strategic win by being able to assert control over that strait.
That is a different perspective that we
will
haven't
see
talked much
this
about.
weekend.
Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, look, I just want to go back. I think if you occupy 1/3 of southern Iran, Iran still be able to position to warn off those ships and tankers and keep the traffic away. If that's the core objective here, the way to do it is either to get rid of the Islamic
You got it right,
Republic
Joe.
in its entirety.
Trump is a chicken hawk.
Or seek some kind of diplomatic resolution where Iran says no more are they going to be.
He's a draft-dodging coward.
Creating trouble around the strait.
The Secretary of Defence has said all options are still on the table, but not forever.
President Trump will make a deal he is willing.
Oh, this fucking guy.
And
This
the
war
terms of the
criminal.
deal are known to them. If Iran is not willing, then the United States War Department
Look at that
will
punchable
continue
face.
with
Look at it.
even more intensity.
Alex, Pete Hegseth used the word intensity. Now, he's not delivering a message to Iran. That message is to the American domestic audience. What does intensity mean when he is telling them that?
That's a great question. I don't actually have a good answer. I'm looking at all the targets that haven't been hit. Over 13,000 by the most recent report I saw. 13,000 targets in about 5 weeks. That's a lot. What's left to hit at this
Including
point?
schools.
The president is warning, that Iranian civilian infrastructure might be hit. I don't know if that's just, again, posturing, bluster on his part, if he's going to go down there. Because one
Only
thing
double
that
tap
would
that
really
bridge.
upset a lot of folks, particularly the Iranian people, by and large, who are against this regime, is if they are being targeted as a people, and the war goes from being one between the United States, Israel, and the Islamic Republic, and one being fought against the people of Iran. Because then, in that scenario, who wins? The Islamic Republic. The narrative that they have always sort of put out there wins. And that's a terrible situation to contemplate.
Joel, I'll come to you finally. Who in this administration, if anyone, is keen on a ground invasion?
No, the president's the decision maker on this, and it's not going to.
But he has advisors.
Sorry?
He must have advisors.
It boils down to, do you have the objective of using military means to force open the Strait of Hormuz, to secure the Persian Gulf for a resumption of safe commercial shipping or not? If the president decides that, and the president, I think, is fully equipped by this point in his presidency and his experience to be
I thought this was about regime change. I thought this was about stopping their nuclear capabilities.
US diplomat, and Joel Vatanka,
What
Senior
happened to
Fellow
those things?
and Iran Program Director at the Middle East Institute. Thank you both for coming in today. The speculation over whether there will be US boots on the ground in Iran is being dissected by the American public. Voices across the political spectrum are getting increasingly heated and polarized about the possibility. Alex Baird has this roundup of the conversation.
Boots on the ground. The debate online coming back to this. Soldiers already coming back home in caskets. And Iran's military pledging that if American troops set foot on Iranian soil, not a single one should make it out alive. The speculation on social media reaching fever pitch about whether those boots are close to touching soil. Army vet and Democratic Congressman Pat Ryan saying it's clear what's happening and that Trump owes an explanation now. Other commentators combing over recent shots of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth with the troops, saying this is not a good sign. If we were about to pull out, I don't think this would be happening right now. Far-right podcaster Nick Fuentes calling out the elephant in the room.
I agree, Joe.
Something is taking time, but it isn't diplomacy.
And the latest, that 3 Army generals have been fired. You can see why people are talking. Joe Kent, who quit as boss of the National Counterterrorism Center last month, desperate to keep those boots home.
He's a
This would be
MAGA loyalist.
catastrophic escalation that will only result in more bloodshed and further escalate this disastrous war.
Prominent Trump supporter Mark Levin batting for the president, saying, well, he never made any promises not to deploy, and why shouldn't we?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, and we wouldn't need 300,000 of them.
The response to that from former MAGA voice Candace Owens.
I say by all means, allow the Mark Levins, the Ben Shapiros to sign their offspring up instead.
The speculation mill is going full bore. Trump's
MAGA's eating each other.
Now seen by some
It's hilarious.
as a sales pitch, paving the way for a new escalation. Professor Adam Cochran.
I
with
know,
this
right?
somber
Fuentes.
takeaway.
Kid's like 16, doing his show out of his mom's basement.
That's all from the team here in Washington, D.C.
He's got a better
On
setup
This
than I do,
Is
though.
America will keep following the decisions that shape the U.S. and influence the world. Today, we've been discussing the American troop buildup in the Middle East and whether that's being used as a bargaining chip or a sign of military escalation.
All right, guys, I'm going to do one more hour, I think, unless things are going really well, then we'll keep going. But thank you all for coming and enjoying the stream. And all the chat, you guys are great. Thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'm going to go get a drink. I'll be right back.
This is America, with Al Jazeera's exclusive interview with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
What are your main demands?
The Iranian regime can never have nuclear weapons.
The Iranian regime is able to take a lot of pain.
What's worse than having no off-ramp? Having no allies.
NATO has done absolutely nothing.
This sound and that sight have become the new normal across the Gulf.
This is America, every weekday on Al Jazeera. On Counting the Cost, with higher oil prices and ease sanctions, Russia's hoping to gain from the conflict in the Middle East and further its war aims in Ukraine. But those plans are at risk from Ukrainian attacks. So can Russia help fill the global energy gap, or is its capacity already under threat? Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera.
Hard-hitting interviews.
Aren't you afraid that you might be one of the targets?
Anyone could become a target. We have seen that they have no hesitation about targeting any place.
Facing realities.
Does Qatar still trust Iran enough to mediate?
Let's say that this aggression brings a benefit for no one.
Thought-provoking answers.
How many have been displaced inside Iran?
I've heard 3 million. It could be more.
Hear their story on Talk to Al Jazeera.
Hello, I'm Sami Zaidan. This is Al Jazeera.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
The war between the US, Israel, and Iran. A US fighter jet goes down in Iran while a second crashes in the Gulf. 2 crew have been rescued.
Iran is claiming they shot that warthog down.
Out in Tehran over those strikes, but the US and Israel continue attacking infrastructure.
Now, is this all propaganda from Iran, or is this real?
The US stands to make a fortune from Iran's oil once he reopens the Strait of Hormuz.
I mean, are the Iranian people turning against us? I mean, can you blame them? We're bombing them back into the Stone Age.
Iran says it downed 2 American aircraft.
It's more like
on
policing?
Friday, and its forces still have fighting capability against the US and Israel. The first warplane was shot down in Iran's Kolgayua and Boyar Ahmad province, prompting a major search operation. US media says 1 crew member has been found. 2 military helicopters involved in that search were reportedly struck by Iranian fire but managed to return to base. Iran says it targeted another US plane near the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial waterway for global energy supplies that is currently blocked by Tehran. American media says the plane crashed in the Gulf region and the pilot was rescued. And in Lebanon, Israel has followed through on threats to blow up 2 key bridges over the Litani River as forces expand their occupation of the south. We have correspondents covering developments here in Doha, Beirut, Tehran, and Washington, D.C., where Al Jazeera's Rosalind Jordan is standing by live for us. So, Rosalind, as I mentioned, there are a lot of reports circulating about American jets, planes, helicopters. What are U.S. officials saying at this point and confirming?
Well, U.S. officials aren't confirming anything on the record, but on the background, they are telling reporters that they are tracking and trying to respond to these several incidents. It is worth pointing out that the U.S. President Donald Trump originally was planning to spend this upcoming Easter weekend at his home in Florida. Instead, he is staying here in Washington for the holiday weekend. He has been apprised of these situations, according to the spokesperson, Caroline Lovett. Now, it is worth pointing out that these are the first incidents involving U.S. military aircraft going down over Iranian territory. And so clearly there is a very great concern, one, just about getting the personnel out safely. In all of these instances, at least 1 person has been rescued, whereas in the case of the 1 or 2 Black Hawk helicopters responding to the downing of the F-15 fighter jet, they were simply fired at, according to U.S. officials, but were not damaged and were able to continue their mission. But that said, this is a matter of concern because 35 days into this war, these are some of the first incidents of U.S. Forces being directly in harm's way that might capture the U.S. public's attention.
Stay with us, Rosalind. Let's bring in Mohammed Val. He's with us from Tehran, and the Iranian military saying it used an advanced air defense system to bring down this plane. Let's listen to what they've had to say.
In response to the false claims made by the US president regarding the complete destruction of Iran's air defense system, an enemy American fighter jet was targeted and destroyed in the skies over central Iran by a new advanced defense system to the aerospace force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard as part of the country's integrated air defense network. The aircraft was completely destroyed.
So keeping that in mind, the Iranian officials also talking about targeting a second U.S. plane, rescue helicopters. What is the narrative of what exactly happened and what happened to the crew?
Well, Sami, there is no detail about what happened to the crew, but they are looking for those pilots. The Iranians are saying that they are still looking for those pilots, and they are asking people to help in that search. But at the same time, also, they are talking about those 2 fighter jets and also 5 helicopters they say have been either shot down or damaged. So the Iranians are talking very proudly about this surprise after so many weeks of war and so many claims by the Americans that they have obliterated the Iranian army's capabilities, particularly its air defense systems. Now they are talking here about this surprise and how
I agree, Joe. Trump has destroyed the country, the economy, all our relationships around the world. Even if a Democrat wins in 28, it's going to take years to repair all the damage.
Down the next weeks, and it is just a sign of that Iran is not about to be defeated. And we have seen celebrations in the streets tonight. Celebrations happen every day, every night here in Tehran, but tonight it had a new vigor to it. And everyone is talking about what happened. Everyone is talking proudly about this development in the war. And they are sending strong messages via what happened today to the Americans that they have to think again about what's happening. I have
You can't hear me, Granny? You should be able to hear me.
Of the Parliament, Mohammed Bagher Ghalibaf,
I'm not muted right now.
Says, after defeating Iran 37 times in a row, this brilliant no-strategy war they started has now been downgraded from regime change to, hey, can anyone find our pilots? Please. Wow, what incredible progress. Absolute geniuses. So he's poking fun at the Americans after claiming that they have defeated Iran 37 times. Now they are
I mean, you should be able to hear me.
Iranians or anyone else to
Let's hope you can hear me.
Their pilots inside Iranian territory. That just gives you an idea about how much the Iranians are proud of what they think they have achieved tonight.
Rosalind, in Washington, D.C., does this change the picture presented by U.S. officials about the state of Iranian air defenses?
Well, it certainly is a vivid and very visual contradiction of what the Trump administration has been claiming about its military success in these 35 days of war so far. We've heard not just from the White House, from the president, from his spokesperson, but from the Pentagon, from the defense secretary, from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, just how overwhelmingly the U.S. military is attacking and dismantling the Iranian military's capabilities. But when you see
and yet they're still fighting. Here we are.
An F-15 ejector seat.
If they're decimated and obliterated, why are we putting boots on the ground?
When you see video of equipment that has been damaged or destroyed, that brings it home to people that this is not just something that is happening on the television airwaves or in the online newspapers. There are people who they may know whose lives are being put at risk while they are taking part in this conflict, which was never officially
You're wasting your breath,
Congress.
Joe. Don't engage with the MAGA loons, man.
To Congress, and that's something
they don't know anything.
That has angered particularly Democrats and a few Republicans in both chambers of Congress. But it also brings home to the fact that there are more than 50,000 U.S. troops in the greater Middle East, some of whom are now directly in harm's way.
Trump's not going to be happy till he gets
go back to Mohammed
thousands of
in
American kids
Tehran.
killed.
And Mohammed, there's also been US and Israeli strikes on Iran today. Take us through what the damage has been.
Yeah, we still need more details about the latest strikes here in Tehran. Very loud and powerful explosions reported in many different parts of the city during the evening. We know that Shahid Beheshti University has been targeted, and that's just one of many civilian facilities that have been damaged, targeted, or destroyed over the last few days. We have the Pasteur Institute yesterday for pharmaceutical production products and vaccines. We have the bridge in Karaj, and also many schools reportedly damaged during this war. So this is a continuation of the targeting of civilian facilities. We have also many cities that have been hit today: Oromia, Khurram Abad, Karaj, Qum, Kermanshah. Those cities have been bombarded during the evening and during the day. We still don't have the details, but that's, I mean, the air bombardment campaign is continuous as we speak.
All right, let's thank both of our correspondents, Rosalind Jordan in Washington, D.C., and Mohammed Val in Tehran. Israel has followed through on its threats to blow up two key bridges in Lebanon. The Sahmor and Mashghara bridges connect Hezbollah's supply lines in the east with the south of the country. And these pictures are from earlier on
Trump and
Friday.
Bibi like blowing up bridges.
The military says it's trying to prevent Hezbollah from moving reinforcements. Israeli forces have been stepping up their invasion, destroying homes and infrastructure. Heidi Pett is live for us in Beirut. So just how significant is the destruction of these bridges first over the Litani?
Yeah, so these bridges that have been blown up earlier this evening are the 8th and 9th bridges over the Litani that Israel has tried to destroy, or indeed successfully destroyed, in the last couple of weeks. Now, speaking to local sources in the area, they say that these two bridges connecting the towns of Sokhmor and Mashghara have indeed been destroyed. They say that they are unusable. And in fact, that just in the last couple of minutes, there have been further airstrikes in that area, one on the village of Mashghara in the last couple of minutes, and in the last hour, 3 strikes on Sokhmor. So definitely the focus of
Bibi's another one that's got to go away already.
This evening. But the purpose of these strikes, according to Israel, on the bridges, which I should state are civilian infrastructure, and its destruction may represent a war crime, but they say that the purpose of that is to prevent Hezbollah from moving men and weapons to southern Lebanon. But the impact, of course, on the civilian population who also use these bridges is huge, because it has the effect of isolating southern Lebanon from the rest of the country. And these strikes tonight in the southern Bekaa Valley are an attempt to cut off the Bekaa from South Lebanon as well, meaning that it's much more difficult for people to travel if they are choosing, in fact, to obey these wide-ranging forced evacuation orders that are given on a rolling basis by the Israeli military, telling people to move to move north of the Litani River. In fact, north of the Zahrani River as well.
Just marching into another country and just taking land and telling everybody, get out, we're going to bomb your houses. This isn't a war crime?
To the thousands of people who do still remain in southern Lebanon.
And bring us up to speed, Heidi, with the situation with
Trump does think that stealth planes are actually invisible. Yeah, he's that stupid.
Where is that leaving the Israeli ground advance?
Yeah, so Israel has been attempting to expand this ground invasion that's been ongoing in southern Lebanon for several weeks now, and it's focused on a couple of key axes, and the central one is around this town of Bint Jbeil. Now, the Israelis are not attempting to directly enter that town. It seems that this is an extension of their policy across southern Lebanon, where instead of entering into densely populated towns, or indeed even smaller villages, where they're worried that they'll get drawn into urban warfare. They're worried that guerrilla tactics will serve as an advantage for Hezbollah, where they're able to target Israeli troops as they attempt to head into the middle of
Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate it. Thank you.
What they're trying to do
it all helps the channel, man.
They're going around. They're focusing on trying to get control of a number of smaller villages and hilltops around places like Bint Jbeil, which has been the focus of a lot of fighting in the last day or so, as well as a focus on detonations in the Ura and a continued effort in the axis towards the east around Hiyam and the Kantara.
All right, we'll leave it there. Heidi Play. One person has been killed in the United Arab Emirates after being hit by falling debris from an air defense interception. Authorities say 4 other people were wounded during the incident.
Thank you, Max.
At Abu Dhabi's Habshan gas facility. The complex is the UAE's largest natural gas processing
We're all
site.
waiting for that obituary.
Officials say it sustained significant damage from the attack after fires broke out.
Yeah, there aren't many of us
Iran's
left, man.
effective blockade of the Strait of
Well,
Hormuz
I mean,
has posed
Trump's
a
approval is
problem
only
for
like
President
33% right now,
A
so
significant portion of global
maybe people are
shipping
growing up here,
paralyzed because of the
waking
war.
up.
But in
I
a
hope.
social media post
We'll find
today,
out in
the US
November.
president claims America can open the strait, can make money by taking Iran's
Can make
oil
money.
too.
Who's making the money?
In a Truth Social
Taking the oil.
post, he says, with a little more time, we can easily open the Hormuz Strait.
Easily.
Take the oil and make
Take
a
the oil.
fortune.
Who's going to make the fortune? Him and his buddies, right? Not us.
For the world.
What happened to freeing the Iranian people, giving them a democracy and a normal country to live in? What happened to going in and taking the uranium and stopping their nuke capabilities? All of a sudden, that's all gone. And Trump just defaults back to what he believes in: oil, grift, the grift. It's all about the grift.
Since this conflict began, that appears to have happened in the absence of any agreed protocol. Iran essentially can decide who it lets through the Strait of Hormuz and who it decides to block.
Ridiculous.
There are currently an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 vessels.
He said it himself. He loves the uneducated.
This critical waterway. It's causing huge international. It's having huge international ramifications as a result. Now, normally there would be about 100 vessels that would pass through in either direction on a daily basis. We're down to just a trickle now, a handful a day. As you mentioned, a French vessel did get through on Friday, the first time a Western vessel has got through. There have been other countries that Iran has allowed
Hello,
through.
Mohammed.
Reportedly, they have demanded payment for that. Those flagged ships come from
Correct.
Japan, Thailand, Greece.
The hardcore
China,
magas
Pakistan,
cannot admit
India,
that they were
and
wrong,
Iraq.
man.
But the vessels
They
that aren't
cannot
allowed
do it.
through are flagged
Their
to the
ego
US,
won't allow
to
it.
Israel, to the UK, and other US allies. So this is causing a huge problem for those countries. There is some positive news in the sense that Oman and Iran have been working on some kind of protocol, we're told, to try and open up the Strait of Hormuz and agree some kind of rules of engagement, if you like. But there's still key questions to answer. What will that protocol
Those
look like?
talks aren't
Will
going to
it
go
be
anywhere.
acceptable to the international community? Will it include payments that Iran has said it wants to be made for it to allow vessels
Sad
to go
but true,
through?
Lola.
The GCC has said that is
Fuck the
unacceptable
USA.
to them.
Yeah,
The US
kinda.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio in an
Kinda, sorta
exclusive
agree.
interview the other
Fuck
day
part
said
of the
it was
USA.
unacceptable to the US as well.
Fuck MAGA. Fuck the
And while we're
warmongers.
seeing European engagement
Tired of this.
with
How
the
are we
Gulf
supposed to move
picking up
forward as a
over the Strait
society
of
and grow
Hormuz?
as a civilization, as
certainly
human
we are
beings,
seeing
as a
increased
species?
European engagement.
When we're always
There
doing
was
shit
a
like this,
visit
when we always
by the
revert back to our
Italian
lizard
Prime Minister,
brains.
Giorgia Meloni, to this region. It's the
We
first
as a
time
planet
that a
need to
Western
get past all of
European
this.
leader has come to the Gulf region
And the United
since this
States
conflict
and the
began.
free world should be
Rocket
helping
said that she
lead
was
the way
here
in
to,
that direction.
discuss
Not always
bilateral
falling
relations
back
with
to
the Crown Prince
war.
of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. She arrived in Jeddah. We weren't told in advance that she was coming for security reasons, but she arrived. She's also here, we're told, to
I know I
secure
mentioned it earlier,
Italy's
but
energy
Maloney's
supplies
hot.
and talk about this disruption caused by Iran's effective blocking of the Strait of Hormuz.
I know she's a
And she's
right
here
winger,
really
but
also to represent the European
It's all right.
Union as well as Italy's interests.
I wouldn't kick her out of
Europe
bed.
and Asia rely very heavily on gas and oil from this region. Europe, particularly, ever since
James, you think
Russia's
American kids
invasion
aren't
of
scared? You think
Ukraine
American
4
Marines
years
aren't
ago,
scared
has
right now?
relied increasingly on energy supplies for this region. So European leaders,
Everybody's
as well
scared.
as GCC leaders,
That's what
keen
war
to
does.
see the Strait of Hormuz open so that they can ensure the free flow of energy to their countries.
Victoria Gatenby live for us from Doha. Well, Phyllis Bennis is a fellow with the Institute for Policy Studies and a specialist on U.S. foreign policy with a focus on the Middle East. She joins us now from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us. So, does the U.S. military now have to explain how we went from a situation of weeks of very few, if any, verified reports of US aircraft being downed, to US media reporting at least 4 incidents of US aircraft being targeted within just a few hours.
Yeah, I think this is going to be particularly difficult for the White House to explain, particularly because they have focused so much in recent days about the claims, obviously false at this point, that the US controls the skies over Iran, that the US has destroyed all of Iran's capabilities in air defense. We don't know exactly what capabilities still remain, but clearly they are usable. They have some defense against
James, who
these
cares?
attacks. And
We're not talking about the past. We're talking about right now.
Iranians were
Right
holding
now.
back some of their capabilities to
Stay on
use
point.
later. I don't know, and we probably won't know that for quite some time. But
Yeah, I know.
think this
I know,
is
Joe.
going to have
He's a
very
big tough guy.
significant
They're all tough guys,
impact on how
you know,
they are
behind the
trying to
keyboards.
sell this war to the American people, particularly to the so-called MAGA base, the core base of the Trump administration.
They're loving him
which
for
has
this.
largely
They voted for no
supported
more
this war.
wars, got a war,
70%
and they love it. They're just
the MAGA supporters said that they agreed with
They're
going
eating
to
it
war
up
in Iran. Whether they
like a
continue
horn
to
of
support
porno.
that, knowing that U.S. planes are being shot down, pilots may be missing. We don't know what's going to happen to the 1 or perhaps 2 pilots who have not been found and located. This changes the equation. I don't think it changes the military equation necessarily, but it certainly changes the propaganda equation.
Let me play devil's advocate here and bring you the line. I've been hearing from analysts who are more supportive, perhaps, of the White House's policy on this, and they say, "Look, this is
Thanks, Jay.
just a few
Do I
out
look
of,
good? Thank you.
Thousands of sorties.
I'm old. I can't look that good.
Will it ultimately change?
I'm having a good
course
day.
of
How
this
was your day going,
conflict,
man?
And especially the
How are you
plans
doing?
for any upcoming operations.
I think it could change the plans based on, again, the propaganda side. The question of how much support is there in the United States has to be taken into account.
I don't know what you're saying, James.
The White House has just come forward in the last few hours with a demand to Congress for raising the extraordinarily, horrifyingly high military budget of this year, which passed the $1 trillion mark. $1 trillion, Sammy, that's one of those numbers that you can't even imagine how big it is. And now they're saying they want a budget of $150 trillion next year. Sorry, $1.5 trillion next year. This is one of those bizarre things that nobody can even comprehend what this means. But at the same time, the president said, we can't afford childcare because we have a war to fight. So he's saying that we
Can't afford to take care of our own people
$500 billion
in our own country because we have to fight a war.
which we are clearly not just winning
The fuck
easily.
out of here.
And we can't afford to pay for our children. We can't
Can he
afford
make the
food
argument,
stamps.
Phyllis, that he'll get the money from the Straits of Hormuz? The U.S. president today has been talking about how he can open the straits, he can take Iran's oil and make a fortune, I think was the words he used.
Make a fortune.
Yeah, he
for
did
himself
say
and his
that,
buddies.
and maybe he thinks he can. I think the people around him, hopefully, are saying, Mr. President, you better be careful what you claim that you can do.
James, I'm not
because
paying
we're not at
attention.
all
This
clear how that would
chat's
happen.
flying by me.
You know, the Strait of Hormuz
What are you
is
talking
closed
about?
right now. Iran is calling the shots. in
I
the
own a
Strait.
car.
They're allowing some ships to go through that are flagged by countries not connected in any way to Israel and or the United States. I don't see that changing anytime soon. His claim
Thanks,
that
man.
somehow
What kind of
the
projects you
strait
working on
will
over there?
naturally open all by itself the instant that the fighting stops simply doesn't work. It doesn't take into account the role of the big insurance companies who make the decisions about this. They're not going to rely on a claim from Trump or anyone else that says, "Oh, as soon as the fighting stops, they'll just open it up. Oh, we stopped fighting."
Thanks
so
for
you can go
coming to the
through
live,
now.
Jay. Appreciate
They're
it,
going to
man.
want guarantees, and Trump can't provide them. So I think this is going to be a very, very difficult challenge when he says that we're sending Iran back to the Stone Age where they belong. This incredible
Wonderful
kind of
rhetoric from a
racist,
sitting president of the
Islamophobic
United States.
language that he's been using that also doesn't match what they're facing in terms of opposition. He said just a few days ago, Iran is no longer a threat, and then went on to say, but we're going to hit them even harder in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Really, James?
If they're not a threat, why are we going to
Okay.
hit them harder? It's talking about the war crimes he's anticipating, the war crimes he has said he will carry out. We will go after the oil industry. We will go after the electrical plants. We will go after water purification. These are all war crimes. And there will be accountability for
Trump
this.
doesn't
I think
care.
that what we
Yeah.
saw
Not
with
for Trump,
the
though. No
lack of
accountability for him.
the lack
For
of,
Hegseth and others around him,
any
yes.
real way of holding Israel accountable in their genocide in Gaza, this is not going to be allowed again for Israel and the United States to carry out war crimes with impunity. There will be accountability at some point on this.
Yeah, man, I don't stop anybody from having, saying what they want to say. You can call me stupid, you can call me a lib, you can yell at each other in there. I don't care. Unless YouTube comes back to me and says, hey, you got to shut this down, I let it fly.
Al Jazeera, time to recap our headlines now. Iran says it's down 2 U.S. warplanes. One went down over southwest Iran. Media reports say one of its 2 crew members has been rescued. The other American plane went down over the Gulf, and its pilot has been recovered, we're told.
Thank you, CC.
Has crossed the Strait of
Appreciate
Hormuz
it.
for the first time since
Welcome.
the Iran war
Like and
began.
subscribe.
Ships linked to Russia and some countries in Asia have also
If you
been
like
given
this stream,
safe
you're going to love the
passage.
content that's on the
Iran
channel.
has reportedly started charging ships money to pass. Israel has blown up 2 key bridges in eastern Lebanon. They're the 8th and 9th crossings over the Litani River to be destroyed by Israeli forces. These pictures are from earlier on Friday.
Yep, you got it
before
right,
the
Joe.
attack. Israel says it's trying to prevent Hezbollah from
But once
moving
again, Trump won't face any accountability. He never has, and he never will.
Pakistan's government says it'll
You can thank the
slash
Supreme
petrol
Court for that.
prices by 30% a litre in order to address rising costs linked to the Iran war. That announcement comes a day after the government hiked fuel prices and sparked mass protests. Shrinking fuel supplies and high demand driven by the Strait of Hormuz disruptions have triggered panic buying and massive queues across the country. Markets in Asia have climbed slightly on reports that Oman and Iran are drafting a protocol to monitor traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. The gains came despite an increase in energy prices. Meanwhile, the US is providing little assurance to investors that its war in Iran
God, I hope so,
is
Joe.
nearing a
Don't get my
resolution.
hopes up, man.
Patrick
Don't get my
Fox
hopes
has
up.
more from Singapore.
Even if he lives, he's not facing, his time is up anyway, right? He's not going to run for a 3rd term. MAGA can get that thought out of their heads. So he knows he's at the end, regardless, even if he lives another 3 years. His time as president is over. So he's got to make the money, get the grift rolling. He can do whatever he wants because he knows he's not going to be held accountable for it. He doesn't care about the GOP, really. Other than a possible impeachment, he doesn't really care what happens to the GOP in November because he's done with the party. He doesn't need them. He doesn't need the rubes anymore. The MAGA loons that are out here in the chat still defending him. He doesn't care about them. He never did. And he cares about them even less now because he's done.
We also reaffirmed
It's
our
over.
intention to expand cooperation in nuclear power and offshore wind to strengthen energy security while cooperating to secure safe maritime shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz.
In another sign of movement in the vital waterway, reports say Iran has agreed to allow Philippine-flagged vessels through the strait. The Philippines
Wow,
has been
Jay,
among
you're too
countries
smart to
worst
be in this
affected
chat,
by
buddy.
energy supply disruptions. The development could alleviate some
You might want to
pressure.
find something a little more cultured.
Remain at risk.
'Cause we ain't it.
In the daily lives of people struggling with rising food and energy costs, from the Philippines to Sri Lanka to Mozambique to communities far beyond. Many aspects of the conflict may be uncertain, but one thing is
Thanks,
known.
Christine. Don't forget to like
If
and
the
subscribe.
drums of war keep beating,
Dumbass.
escalation will only make all of these worse.
Trump is doing a great
For
job
now,
for Americans.
The path out of the crisis remains elusive.
Are you a
Renewed
bot in
disruption
India?
in the Strait of Hormuz will likely bring more turmoil to the markets and deepen concerns about energy supplies.
Thanks, man. That's why I'm here.
Singapore.
Trying to lighten everybody's load a
The
little bit.
Israeli army has blocked a protest by Israeli and Palestinian peace activists in the occupied West Bank against the death penalty law passed earlier
I'm trying,
this
man.
week. The bill makes the death penalty the default sentence for Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks. Protests have been held across the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem over the past couple of days.
Well, you guys are crushing it, man. Thank you all so much for subscribing.
At least 8 people died when a house collapsed.
I can't explain how happy that makes me that you guys are subscribing. Thank you so much to everybody.
We're back in 30 minutes. Stay with us.
The latest news as it breaks.
What this front from Yemen is going to represent to Israel is a threat from air and a threat from sea.
I'm possessed by Satan. Thank you. You're one of those, huh? One of those good right-wing Christian nationalist folks that believes in war, even though you voted for no more wars. I gotta stretch my legs.
Emptying whole
I'll be right
areas
back.
may amount to a war crime and a strategy to permanently depopulate the areas.
Can you really bomb a political future into existence?
I don't think that's what we're trying to do. I think the objective here is to destroy the instruments of Iranian state power.
Let me ask you this directly. Is Israel effectively leading U.S. foreign policy?
They want to do a Gaza-like effort on the main power centers in Iran to kill thousands of people, not just the core.
Upfront tackles the big issues only on Al Jazeera.
Hello, I'm Rishad Salamat. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera. We're looking at the global economic impact of the war in the Middle East. One nation that's hoping to gain from the Middle East conflict is Russia, the world's third biggest oil producer. Higher crude prices due to this disruption in the Strait of Hormuz have allowed Russia to earn more from its oil and gas exports. The US has temporarily eased sanctions on Russian oil, but the European Union has refused to do that, saying more revenue will embolden Russia's efforts to prolong its war in Ukraine. But the revised budget plans are at risk following repeated Ukrainian attacks on ports and oil refineries. Russia has banned petrol exports to protect against domestic fuel shortages. So can Russia help fill the global energy gap? Or is its capacity already under threat? Russia is seeing a turnaround in its economic prospects as oil and gas prices rise and its tankers benefit from US sanction waivers. While the European Union is holding on to sanctions, is there a new appetite in Europe for Russian oil and gas? The increased revenue is expected to help close budget holes, as well as bolster Russia's war plans against Ukraine. But Kyiv has accelerated its strikes on Russian oil infrastructure. Will Ukrainian attacks limit Moscow's ability to stabilize the global energy market? We have a panel of guests to discuss all this shortly, but first, here's Fintan Monaghan's report.
The war in the Middle East has raged for more than a month. Disruption to shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has cut off 20% of the world's oil and gas supply. Many countries are preparing for tough times, but for one, the chaos could provide
I didn't say
an
everyone was MAGA,
opportunity
James.
to come out ahead.
Just the stupid ones.
Now that the prices of our traditional exports are rising, but the markets are in turmoil, there may be a temptation to take advantage of the situation to generate short-term gains. I would like to emphasize it once again. We must exercise common sense.
Russia is one of the world's largest producers of oil, number 3 behind the United States and Saudi Arabia. It relies on oil and gas revenue.
Right, Joe? That's what Jesus was all about. There's the cat. Yeah. She ran away, Jay. Sorry.
Around 10% of global supply.
The other one's hanging out over there.
But the war in Ukraine upended Russia's economic model. Western powers imposed sanctions that closed off many key markets. Russia continued to sell oil to partners like China and India, but had to do so at a discount. The Iran war has changed that arithmetic. Fuel prices are surging as countries rush to outbid each other to access suddenly limited supply. The result has been a windfall for Russia. Years of war and sanctions had squeezed Russia's finances. Oil and gas revenues were down to $10 billion in the first 2 months of the year.
I didn't say you were MAGA, James. I said you were stupid.
Period in 2025. The Kremlin was reportedly planning a 10% cut to all non-security spending. But now, analysts predict
Thank you,
Russia
Jay.
could gain an additional $45 billion in budget revenue.
She's a
this
stray
year.
that showed up at her
If
door.
the war drags on for more than 6 months, that could reach as high as $151 billion, enough to replenish state coffers and maintain war spending for years to come. The need to stabilize global energy markets has also benefited Russia. The US loosened sanctions on Russian oil that's already at sea, freeing up around 100 million barrels for sale. Europe shifted away from Russian energy, but the current crisis has created pressure to reverse that policy. So far, the EU is resisting that temptation.
We see that Russian economy is not doing well. Even, the oil price hike is not helping them as much as they need. They have huge
Don't worry,
issues with
Trump to the rescue.
recruitment of,
Gonna remove
new
all the
soldiers
sanctions
in
on the
their
Russian
army.
oil. Help his
So
buddy Vlad.
We have to see that this is the picture that we can't give up now. We actually have to increase the pressures.
Ukraine is also keen to undermine Russia's advantage. It stepped up
Yeah,
its
Jay,
tax
they're
on
healthy
oil
cats.
export hubs. 40%
They get
of
all their
Russia's oil
shots, regular
export
visits.
capability is now
Cost me a
compromised,
small fortune.
according to the Reuters news agency. Kiev strikes have damaged refineries, causing fuel shortages in some regions. Moscow has responded by imposing an export ban on petrol. Ukraine's allies have been seizing tankers belonging to the so-called Russian Shadow Fleet, carrying oil in violation of sanctions. Russia has downplayed the impact, but warned it could make the global energy crisis worse.
Ukraine's attacks are creating, amongst other things, some entirely temporary difficulties, but those could lead to greater price rises and even deeper crisis, including in the
dogs, Joe.
European Union
Yeah.
and Britain.
Yeah, I'm going to be sad when
Russia
these
is
things
positioned
pass.
to benefit
They're
from
like
the crisis
family.
in the Gulf. And the longer the disruption continues,
I don't
the
deal with
more
death
it
well.
stands to gain.
I didn't want pets for that
Vincent
reason.
Monahan, Al Jazeera, for
And the
Counting
wife's like,
Cost.
no, let's get cats. So we got one
Let's dive
cat.
deeper into this. Joining us
And
from
then
Moscow is Russian
that
energy
one showed
expert
up at our door.
Vyacheslav Michenko in London. We have John Love. He is
Pure
head
breed,
of policy
Scottish
at the
fold.
think
Someone
tank
threw it out.
Eurasian Strategy Center.
Ended
Has
up at our back
previously
door.
worked with NATO and the Russian oil and gas industry. And in Berlin is Maria Pashtukova. She's an expert in energy
What's the current
geopolitics and diplomacy, as well as
state of the Strait of
program leader at
Hormuz?
E3G. It's an
Yeah, I hear you,
independent think
Joe.
tank
I
focusing
know.
on
I,
energy
that's,
policies globally.
I don't even want to think
First
about
of all,
it.
Vyacheslav, let's start off with you.
Something I'm not going to deal with well.
What state is the Russian oil industry actually in?
The Strait of Hormuz, Jay, is still fucked. Few ships have gotten through, but most are still sitting there. Trump says that we can open it easily, even though he's had a month, even though it was open before he invaded and started a war. But, you know, he would beg for help to open it, and then he says we don't need help, and now he's saying it can open easily.
They don't work anymore.
And we can make lots of money on the oil.
So the production is
I don't know who we is. It ain't me.
So Russia possesses some additional volumes to produce, and there are two crudes actually, two market crudes like Urals, which is normally should go to the west side, and actually ISPO, called after the pipeline East Siberia Pacific Ocean, which goes to the Pacific Ocean actually. I think that's the direction Russia could increase because the demand
yeah,
is
this
in
weekend, Terry,
Asia-Pacific
and that's actually kind of
South
scary.
And East Asia. And
I mean, we bitch and
demand
make fun of him when he spends every weekend golfing, but now all of a sudden he's going to stick around on a holiday weekend, an extended weekend? He's not going golfing?
To this direction.
That's,
On top of that,
I think that's a huge tell.
which were a subject of
Hope the Iranians are ready. There might be boots on the ground this weekend.
And I think OFAC and generally American administration gave permission to key buyers like India to get this crude. It was about 50 million barrels, I think, which already sold. So in the first month, and the permission, if I'm not wrong, is
I agree with that, James.
11th of April will be shut. So I'm not sure about whether they go.
Trump is kind of backed into a corner, man. I mean, where's his win here? Where is his win? All this Iranian regime has to do is just hold out, and they win, even if they get their ass kicked on the battlefield.
Russian oil facilities.
It doesn't matter. You're decimating their country.
So,
But as long as they can still launch a few missiles, hit a couple of oil tankers in the strait, and hang on to power, they win.
Exports fell already by
You haven't stopped the nuke capabilities. You haven't grabbed the uranium. No freedom for the Iranian people.
escalation, and then the March attacks on Primorsk and Ust-Luga
The strait's all
hit
fucked
the
up.
export system much more directly. What we're looking at is approximately 40% of Russia's crude export capacity that has been affected. Not of all of that taking.
Yeah, the special condition, Jay, is that they pay
Of it. The Russia's Western export system has
something
been
like $2 million a tanker.
quite a bit, and given that there are export constraints on the eastern track, because most of the capacity towards the east is already
Eric, stop. I'm not a communist. Jesus Christ. I'm a full-blown American capitalist, man.
Will be able to boost
I believe in taking care of our people first.
Both of crude and petroleum products.
And I don't believe in this war. And I don't like Trump, but I haven't liked Trump since the 1980s. I'm not a communist. I don't want to see America fail.
Even if Russia were able to
Stop.
To boost its production, and it has never been a big swing state. So boosting production and a short demand has never been Russia's forte. Even if it would have been
I hear you,
possible,
James.
it's a big question whether it will be
I'm
able
with
to
you.
get it out. We do not know the extent of the damage done fully yet. We might be looking at several weeks. We might be looking at
Thanks,
some
Eric.
parts of
Yeah,
that
no.
capacity being out of operation
Stop.
for some months. I would say Russia cannot really meaningfully help offset the global energy disruptions, particularly on oil, in the short or midterm, because what we're looking at is. It is not all of the 20 million barrels a day that normally exit Hormuz that are locked right now. I think we're looking at about 9 to 10 million barrels a day of global oil shortage, because a significant part of that is still getting out via land and Red Sea, but also Iran keeps exporting almost
I agree, Joe.
at capacity to China. But still, it's about 10 million barrels a day. It's about 10% of global oil demand. Russia can in no meaningful way replace.
No, Jay, I didn't see those. What do you have to say?
John, two quite opposite views there. What's your take?
Well, my take is that Russia is going to struggle to increase production significantly, both in short term and medium term. Short term, I think probably over the next year it could do.
Did you subscribe yet?
Additional 5%, something like that. It would then have to drill a lot more wells, and then you'd be looking.
What job has Trump gotten done?
5% in a year's time. So I tend to agree with you that Russia's ability
Demon
to
crap.
fill the gap here
That tells you exactly who you are. You're one of those weirdos on
Indeed,
Facebook.
We've got also the fact, as Maria was saying, that these export terminals have been damaged recently. It's difficult to know how long it's going to take to repair those, but there's certainly going to be some short-term impact. So I think relying on Russia to be, a sort of swing supplier in these conditions is really rather optimistic.
Vyacheslav, your take on this. I mean, the thing is that Russia produces the right kind of oil as well, and how much of that is their spare capacity?
I'm not sure about
Jesus
whether I can
Christ,
answer
that's
this question,
fucking
but
bright.
I would like to stress that since we're talking about the volumes, I think the strategy at the moment shouldn't be just about the volume. Because economically, I think like Russian producer, so we don't need to satisfy all the demands. So I think the key element of this is economic efficiency of the trade, because the crude, and especially Russian crude, is now because the spread, because of the physical markets and future market spread, so the physical volumes are being traded with a premium now, and I think Russia could gain and actually sell probably not too many destinations and not a big volume of crude, but with a high economic efficiency. I think getting more commercial value actually of this. So I think this is the strategy we should bear in our minds.
John, so let's just turn it this other way. Is Europe actually reconsidering the use of oil from Russia? And that would go really against the grain for many countries in Europe. I'm not including the likes here of, let's say, Hungary.
Well, the European Union is committed to phasing out its fossil fuel imports from Russia over the next, year, 18 months. Now, this crisis is certainly, I think, going to concentrate minds in some European capitals. The I think probably major attraction might be to import additional Russian gas. I mean, Russia has still been exporting gas to Europe since the start of the war in Ukraine, but at much reduced volumes. Before the war started, it was up as high as 180 billion cubic meters per year. And last year, I think it was down to about 18. So there's been a sort of dramatic change here. That's pipeline gas, and still some significant volumes of liquefied natural gas, LNG.
Thank you so much, Joe, for coming. Thanks for the sub, man. Appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. I'm going to go from like 7 to like 9, 10, 11 o'clock. We'll see. But yeah, come on back. Check out the channel. Lots of good stuff, brother.
Manage this war in Ukraine, how that might be playing out, and whether the perception that contributing more significantly to Russian budget revenues just at a time when Ukraine is running short of money and European countries might be in fact struggling to support Ukraine in the same way is going to create, I think, a real headache for some European leaders.
Maria, how much politics is going to play into what's going on in Europe as they look at Russian oil and gas?
Well, I think John's right that European course overall will not be changing, or it doesn't seem to be changing even under this very real economic pressure. This is definitely not the same as reversing course. There are, of course, some rhetorics, particularly in the right-to-lean populist parts of the national party landscape, especially in Germany. AfD is, of course, as always, pushing for strong relations with Russia. But this is not mainstream within most governments. Hungary, of course, is an exception as always. But the shift away from Russian oil and gas is real strategically. It has been since 2022, and this has remained so. The Commission says that the remaining roughly 35 BCM of Russian gas should be out of the European markets in under 2 years, and the 2% of Russia's oil exports that are remaining by pipeline in 2025 should be phased out completely as well.
So you're stupid and communist, Christine, because you're still here watching.
Rhetorics, and that is quite clear. We hear Dan Jorgensen, the energy head of the European Commission.
Please make sure you subscribe.
What needs to be in the focus is cushioning the shock to the consumers, but standing by its Russian gas phase out, the European Russian gas phase out target. But the reality is not just the political. The reality is also that in terms of the legal constraints and the market constraints, it's not that possible for the EU to go back to any considerable uptake of Russian oil and gas. There are regulations that both prevent major re-exports or reviving of exports via Nord Stream, because that pipeline has not been unbundled yet and is wholly owned by Gazprom. That has been the problem before it has been put out of commission.
15 minutes left, guys. If you haven't already liked and subscribed, please do. It really helps the channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm almost there. We're like less than 30 away. Thank you.
And the US, and part of its portfolio is blocked by those suppliers. So for Russia, there is not that much place to return to anymore. As John says, there is some maybe short-term uptick you might be seeing over the Turk Stream pipeline, because that one, the European branch of it, is currently underused, and there is some additional capacity that can be used by Russia if there were demand from the Eastern European countries, especially in the short term. LNG picture looks different. Russia is exporting at capacity from terminals that are not under heavy sanctions. Arctic LNG 2, that could bring potential significant capacity to the market, is still very restricted under sanctions. It's exporting just above 10% of its full capacity, and most of it to China. So there is no real sign or no show of that reality changing. In that sense, I would say European course is not changing so far. We'll see what happens in the next month or two. Of course,
I'm scheduled to come back tomorrow at 7 p.m. But if shit hits the fan, I'll be on immediately. So like and subscribe, turn on your notifications, whatever. If Trump puts boots on the ground, shit goes sideways, I'm diving right in. Same thing for Sunday. I'm not scheduled for anything Sunday, but fuck Sunday dinner. If Trump drops a nuke or puts boots on the ground, I'll be doing it live.
The short-term strategy is actually to sell on the higher prices and to get the most economic values from the operations, or the export operations, within this time frame, actually. And so I think budget is getting now much better, because the previous months were quite upset because of the sanctions and because of the prices, which were quite low. Actually, previous, I'm talking about the 2025. But now I think it's getting better.
All right, thanks, Jay. I appreciate it, man. I'll look into it. I'll check it out.
Russian crude available, physically available, is being traded with a premium to the benchmarks, and that's the good signal for the budget.
John, how critical is energy income for funding Ukraine's war plans? Or should I say Russia's war plans? Sorry.
Indeed. I'll look at it this way. Of course, oil revenues are a significant part of the Russian budget. And Vyacheslav is right.
Like I said, just probably knock out a video or two tomorrow, do a live tomorrow night. Sunday I wasn't going to do anything, just Easter dinner.
Of 2025.
That was it. But if this whole thing escalates, I'll be on here like all weekend. So,
a budget crunch.
what about your plans, Jay? What do you got going on?
Seriously discussing cutting large parts of the budget by 10%. Leaving defense spending, social spending unaffected. So it was clear that this combination of sanctions and lower oil prices were starting to have some real effect and making it much more uncomfortable to continue fighting the war. But it has to be said that this war is not hugely expensive for Russia. When we talk about the country being on a war footing and having a war economy, I think we have to be careful, because it's not consuming a vast amount of GDP, whether it's, I don't know, 6 to 8% or something like that. But giving the countries at war, it is really not a massive investment as one would expect. However, of course, the increased oil revenues are going to reduce the pressure on the budget generally. That's going to make, I think, the Russian public feel that it's not critical to find an immediate end to this war, that the country can go on for a good long while, and certainly the political leadership will see it that way. But I think there's the additional benefit here of the fact that some European countries are going to struggle, I think, to make the case to their publics that they need to keep supporting Ukraine at current levels, and are possibly going to have to do more for Ukraine, given that obviously the US is no longer prepared to provide either economic assistance or military assistance to Ukraine. So that puts the burden on Europe to procure weaponry for Ukraine from the United States. And this is going to
martial arts
create more of an issue in some European countries, and Maria was rightly referring to the rise
mostly rest,
of the far right in certain European
countries. That's what I do, but I'm old.
Voices in France and Germany critical
I work
of
out too, though.
Investment in Ukraine's defense.
Try to stay in some sort of shape for my old age.
Aspect here for the Russian leadership that we need to consider, that Europe is going to struggle, at least in the foreseeable future, to maintain this level of support for Ukraine.
Maria, could one of the things which results from this, that some of these gas fields in particular, and perhaps some oil ones, which were uneconomic, could become economic if this disruption lasts for a long time and oil and gas prices remain elevated?
Well, this is a good question. I would...
Oh, maybe it's the lighting. I usually have this ring light on a green color, like a light green. I don't know, just a cheap ring light. I mean, a couple of years ago, I was like 255 pounds, and right now I'm like 185-ish. I was down as low as 168 at my lowest, but I couldn't maintain that. But as long as I stay away from 200 plus pounds, I'm all right.
Investment conditions are very
Try to take care of myself, man. I was running 5Ks a few weeks ago on my treadmill, and I hurt my knee, so I haven't been able to work out like the last few weeks. I just started getting back into working out a couple of days ago.
Of course, there are other producers out there that might benefit from this.
Yeah, looks better. Good. Okay, I'll keep it.
The gas is probably the biggest winner, given that they can ramp up their shale fairly quickly, and it responds to higher prices. And then there are some Atlantic or some producers across the Atlantic
Thanks, Jay.
outside of the US, including Brazil, Guyana, and Canada, that might be able to pump a little bit more if they fast track the projects that have not been approved. They are in the approval process already, but there is really not that much spare capacity that can be boosted in the near or midterm, and the investment climate and the overall demand projection for global oil and gas demand is really not that rosy for some major, very capital intensive investment decisions to be taken or on new exploration or new fields. In that sense, I think my answer would be rather no.
Okay, I mean, that to you now, Vyacheslav, here as well. Can some
Sticks and
uneconomic
knives.
fields
Man, you're going
become
hardcore, Jay.
now
Jesus.
profitable and sustainable? But of course, this is
I
going
just
to be
throw on my
contingent
headset.
on how long prices do remain high.
Do some cardio boxing in VR.
I would like to reverse a little bit the situation because the market is first. I know that in the US and in Russia, nobody wants
For my
to
diet,
invest
I didn't do anything
massively
special. I just counted
because of the
calories.
situation.
That's all I did.
So
I have an
think
app
we
on my
should
phone,
look at
enter
the
everything that I
medium and
ate.
long-term,
You know, just
actually
counted
market
calories,
movements, and I think this
worked
is
out
short-term
5-6 days a week,
situation doesn't give
about an hour a
any
day,
signal to the
some
investors and to the
some
upstream
strength
sector.
training, and a lot of
Since the
cardio.
situation will be,
VR cardio,
will be
mostly.
going that
Some
way,
walking outside when the
of course
weather's
it
nice, knocking
depends on
out several miles, all that. You know,
strong will be
just
the
trying to stay
damage
active.
on the Gulf
But
production.
you got to start
And,
with the diet.
the
It's all about the
next
diet.
period after
You
the
can't
war,
outwork
I
a
think
bad
then
diet.
the signal
So
will come there, and
count your
I think we
calories,
could
calorie
expect
restrict.
some investment decisions,
Get some
actually, not
exercise.
only in Russia, but in general
Helps
in
you
the
lose
upstream
weight. It's
sector.
good for your heart.
And of course it needs,
Good for your blood pressure. Good for, you know, your lungs and everything.
So on the long
That's most important, you know?
because
It's a combination
since
of
we're
both.
talking about the crisis and the situation now, it's just brief and quite momentum, and this is a spot market and in general. But since we're talking about long-term cooperation, I
Having
think
music,
the
yeah.
investments are
The
there,
programs I
but they
use,
should
one of them
be
is called
based
Supernatural
on the
VR.
contracting
That's
and
got a
the
lot of
long-term contract
great
agreements.
music that you can choose from. Regular music, not computer-generated music.
But John, I want to get your take on this as well. You know, if the war was to come to an end tomorrow,
Lots of protein.
what would that
Lots
mean
of turkey
for
burgers,
prices?
protein
And would they
bars.
go down really quickly, or given that, you know, Russia still has
I got a house
problems,
full of
it
that
still
stuff.
has not reached its capacity, and its refineries are being bombed by the Ukrainians, would high prices be elevated for quite a while from now on?
Well, my understanding is that if the war were to end tomorrow, it would take probably up to 10 months for markets to stabilize. In other words, for supplies to be rerouted, and
Trump fans think that as soon as the war is over, if the war ends tomorrow, that prices are going to drop immediately.
So
That's not going to
That is
happen.
a long period. So during that time, we would probably expect to see prices relatively.
Yeah, I'm not.
elevated.
The wife's making a
And that would
ham
be
for Easter,
advantageous to
Jay.
Russia,
I
because
don't.
the problem
I'm not a
is that
big
we have
ham
to
guy,
consider the fact that if prices were to go excessively
so I
high,
won't be eating
let's
a
say,
ton.
I don't know,
But I'll definitely be
$150,
working out.
then we would probably see some fairly dramatic.
Like I said, I just got to watch
destruction
my
of
knee,
demand.
take care of it.
And that
I sit
then,
down, I hit it with
reduces the opportunity for
infrared
producers
wrap.
such as Russia to,
you know.
to benefit from increased prices. So there is some
Let's try to
sort
take
of
it easy.
balance here, I think, to be achieved if Russia and
When
others
you're
want
old,
to-
it takes a long
want
time to
gain
heal.
from this current disruption. But the signals so far are that there is no easy way for the United States to exit this situation in Iran, that nobody has any sort of solution for how to deal with the Strait of Hormuz, other than perhaps persuading the Iranians that it will be a good idea to actually revert to previous arrangements. But who's going to do that? Is it going to be the Chinese? Because it really doesn't look feasible to open the strait by military means.
John Lowe, thank you so much. Vyacheslav Michenko and Maria Pastukova, thank you so much for joining us. And that is our show. Get in touch with us on X @RishardTV and do use the hashtag AJCT.
All right, guys, that's it for tonight. Thank you very much for joining. Much love to all of you. Thank you all for liking and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. I'm so close to 1,000. Thank you all again. I'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, unless boots hit the ground or something hits the fan, and then I'll be on just about immediately. Much love to all of you. Thanks again. Have a good night.